Stage 2 of 4 in the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway, the most northerly bike race in the world, and undisputably the most beautiful as well too. Look at these incredible shots, looking across the fields and the rolling hills, the gently forested valleys in between them. My name's Jez Cox. I have Ian Field with me as we are right the way through to Sunday's finale at the North Cape, the most northerly point of mainland Europe. And today we take you for a right old Hammerfest. That's because we're going to Hammerfest, setting off from the largest city of its size in the world, the most northerly city of its size in the world, Alta, where we finished yesterday, and finishing today in Hammerfest on the island of Kvaluya. We need to cross the Kalversund Bridge to get there, and it's going to be, I suspect, rather spectacular. Not quite as straight and long as yesterday's long stretch along that E-road we were on, but an awful lot of rivers, lakes and fjords to take in en route. So nice to read all the comments of people on social media last night about how much they'd enjoyed seeing the far north of Norway, well north of the Arctic Circle. And these were the highlights of yesterday's stage. We had 6 riders in the breakaway, worked well together and started hoovering up those early points as well, of course. And then the chase was on as we entered those 2 finishing circuits in Alta. Lewis Bauer was having a good day out, picking up lots of bonus seconds and also winning the first 2 King of the Mountains points. But then the breakaway started to come back. Uno X and others chasing. Vincent van Hemelen did this. He took off by himself and, well, won the all category final King of the Mountains point. It was a bit dodgy in the run-in, but this was the final sprint, won by Alberto Dainese. They're riding for DSM in the black, right in the middle, just ahead of young Noah Hobbs of the Equipe Continentale Groupama FDG. Alberto Dainese, not a big winner, but a winner who wins big, proving himself yesterday as the best sprinter in this race. Big question is, will today's stage come down to a bunch sprint? It's a fascinating finale, not least because they've got quite a lot to contend with. Let's have a look at it, starting off where we finished yesterday in Alta. And effectively, we're continuing to work our way northward as we are all the way through the 4 days of this Arctic Race of Norway. We get the climbing out of the way early on. They've already been over the Reipas summit, the Saves summit, and the Stokkedalen summit is the one they are on right now. Then they head for the seaside, and that 700-metre bridge, which takes them over onto Kvaluya. We have a sprint with 11 kilometres to go before we enter Hammerfest for that little sweep round past the lake and an uphill finish, climbing really for about the last 2 kilometres. My goodness, this is very dramatic music, isn't it? Let's hope the stage is just as good as that, because it's been kicking off, as you can see. These are live pictures right now. We're looking at yet again another day that has a Groupama FDG under-23 team, their under-23 team rider in there. This is Ronan Auger, who's done well out there on the road because he won the only bonus seconds of the day so far. But this lot are so keen to get their hands on that beautiful Peacock King of the Mountains jersey that Vincent van Hemelen has taken it. So that's 3 in a row for him so far. And here come the others having a go. So our breakaway of 6 riders is over the Stokkedalen summit with 110 kilometres to go. And there's our first shot on the bike of that beautiful KOM jersey. Most beautiful, I think, classification jersey in the world. But I love my birds, and the peacock feather is just beautiful, isn't it? It's rather appropriate for a race just like this. Vincent van Hemelen continues to extend his lead in that classification. And actually, by winning an all category and 2 other categorised climbs today, that's all the points on the day gone to him. In a 4-day race, he now stands an extremely good chance of taking that peacock jersey all the way to the finish at North Cape on Sunday, and he'll know that, of course. These are the 6 riders in the break, representing the Norwegian national team. This is Peder Gravas, the 21-year-old. It's yet another day of youngsters in the breakaway, by the way. This is the Trinity Racing rider, Camilo Gomez, I was talking about yesterday, the very exciting climbing Colombian. Bit slower, please, cameraman. This is another coupe rider, Johan Ravnoy, who was in the breakaway yesterday. And then, of course, our King of the Mountains rider here, Vincent van Hemelen of Team Flanders Baloise. We have an Astana Kazakhstan rider in there today. It's the Italian Gianmarco Garofoli. And then, as I said, second day in a row for Groupama FDG. They had 2 riders in the breakaway yesterday for their Continental Under-23 team. And this is Ronan Auger, who's found his way back in. Maybe sensibly just backing off a bit through that third and final King of the Mountains points of the day. My name's Jess Cox, and I am joined by Ian Field. Ian, just as we come on air, that's all the climb's done, and we're about to go into a 60k downhill. Is this going to be boring?
Absolutely not.
Good, I'll hold you to that over the next 60 kilometres.
Yeah, I think the breakaway's actually been given some time today, up to 4.5 minutes already. They've taken in quite a few climbs. I think we were watching a bit of a replay there, so they have still got 1 climb to go. I think that was the first category climb that we were seeing Hemelen take the points over. So we've still got 1 coming up in 3.5 kilometres time. So I'm sure they're going to kick off once again, because we did see just before we came on air that they were really fighting super hard for the previous KOM points. So we've got another sprint coming up in 3.5 kilometres. But then, like you say, 60 kilometres, predominantly downhill, perhaps a little bit of a cross tailwind coming up to help the riders down. But once again, a little bit like yesterday, just the one DSM rider at the front and Uno X lined up behind him, because they'll be wanting to bring this one down to a sprint finish again, especially DSM, who have Darnese there, who won very convincingly yesterday, who want to make it 2 in a row today.
He was extremely convincing yesterday, and you could be forgiven for thinking you're watching shots of yesterday's race, because once again it's the colours of Uno X who are doing most of the fleshing out of the front end. The one DSM rider again. It's different this time though. Yesterday it was the Frenchman, wasn't it, who was doing most of the chasing for them. It was Romain Combeau. They're swapping it out this time, but once again just adding 1 rider in that chase. Thank you for spotting that, Ian, that we were watching a replay of the Sarvez summit. This is on the slopes of the Stockendalen summit. It's a slightly longer climb as well, 4.5 kilometres. And this is Vincent van Hemelen, who popped up out of nowhere yesterday, didn't he? Just sort of popped off the front of the bunch, road clear, and it was perfect timing as well to get that all-category climb. Just to fill people in on the jerseys and how they work, if you weren't with us yesterday here in the Arctic Race of Norway, there's 2 categories of climb on this race. There's the standard category, which is 3, 2 and 1 points when you go over the top of it, and then there's the all category, which is 6, 4 and 2. But unlike some other races, it is still just for the first 3 riders across the top. But Vincent van Hemelen got into that jersey yesterday by winning only one of the 3 categories climbs, but he won the all category climb. This is Camilo Gomez, who I mentioned yesterday, the exciting young Colombian on the Trinity Racing team. And you can see from the red number on his back, as we saw on the podium yesterday, Rohan Ravnui was awarded the most aggressive rider yesterday. It was an aggressive old race between our breakaway riders yesterday, so it must have been a hotly contested classification. That, just to roll you through who is in the jerseys today, by the way, Alberto Darnese is our general classification leader after yesterday, winning the stage and getting those 10 bonus seconds on the line. He wears the Midnight Sun jersey. Haven't seen a shot of him just yet, but it's a lovely leader's jersey. Yellow at the top and kind of orangey at the bottom to reflect the Midnight Sun, which is ever present at this time of the year in Norway. Darnese, of course, leads in the under-25 classification because he is just 25. He's one of the oldest ones in that category. He also leads in the points classification because he won 15 points on the line yesterday. But Noah Hobbs is wearing that blue jersey today, the young Brit. As we said, Vincent van Hemelen wearing the Peacock King of the Mountains jersey. And the under-25 jersey has rolled down, of course, through Alberto Darnese and Noah Hobbs to be worn by the third-place rider in the under-25s, and that is Lewis Bauer. So he has got something to show from a long and solid day out in the breakaway yesterday. The young Kiwi for the FDJ Continental under-23 team. He is in a white jersey with the red sleeves. And Ian, we had some correspondence last night about the word I was looking for. Do you know what it is? It's raglan. It's raglan. Do you know that term?
No.
Oh my gosh. I'm older than you. You're supposed to be down with the kids and know these things. Right, raglan. Raglan is the style of t-shirt. I was wearing one yesterday. It's like a baseball shirt, solid colour in the middle, normally white, and then you like red sleeves, normally short sleeve, or you can have a long sleeve one. It's called a raglan t-shirt. There you go. Don't say I don't educate you about fish birds and T-shirts. Yes, it's a Raglan Star T-shirt, that white jersey. It's white with red sleeves and sort of shoulders to it as well. So, 112 kilometres for our leaders. That means they've got 2k to go to the top of the Stockedalen summit. It's a long enough climb, by the looks of it, for our for our peloton to be on it as well. I think we'll stay with them a little bit. After that, maybe on that long descent, Ian, I'd like to backtrack and look through yesterday's result and see what we can read into it in terms of who fancies their sprinting at these finishes and then who's thinking about the general classification. Because as we know, going back over the history of this race, it's a slightly tricky one to predict the kind of rider that's going to win it, because it kind of does depend where in Norway they take it. I was explaining to viewers yesterday, wasn't I, that last year the race started south of the Arctic Circle and carried on going south. And it seemed to me the further south we went, the more people we had saying, well, this looks lovely, it's a beautiful race, but, you know, they're below the Arctic Circle. It's like they're riding away from the Arctic Circle. Well, it's as if the organisers listened this year, and we've started well above it, right up in the north of Norway. And the whole race is in the Troms og Finnmark region, or county, and it just continues heading northwards until we run out of land, literally run out of land, because we finish on North Cape, which is the most northerly point of Norway as well, overlooking the glaciers and, well, the far north beyond. So, yes, it's going to get a little bit colder. The temperature's around about 12, 13 degrees. What have we got in the way of wind to contend with today, Ian, and how do you think it might affect the race if it does?
So it was a northwesterly, and it was pretty strong earlier in the day, but from the latest forecast it is dying down ever so slightly. So it will be a crosswind from the rider's left-hand side for the vast majority of the stage. So right now, Hemmerlin just sitting at the back of the group. He's won all the KOM points to this point, and like you said yesterday, he definitely won the competition for most points per energy put out. So here we go again, and I'm sure he's going to want to wrap up this second category climb to firmly put that jersey on his shoulders.
Hey, Ravnoy picked up some points yesterday, didn't he? He's going early. He's got 3 or 4 bike lengths on Van Hemelen here as well. I think Ravnoy might get this. Van Hemelen's coming, though. Here he comes in that peacock jersey. Has he got enough time to take Ravnoy? No, he hasn't. Johan Ravnoy there with that red jersey on is going to move himself right up in that classification. He came into the day in, 6th place on just 2 points, but he's been 2nd or 3rd in most of those mountains classifications so far, and Van Hemelen just tracking him now. Maybe he'll congratulate him. Well done, mate. Yep, you started early. I wasn't ready for that. Good move. Good move by the man who wears the red number, Johan Ravnoy of the Danish team, Team Coop Repsol.
That's going to move him up onto 9 points and into 2nd place, going ahead of, I think, Bauer from yesterday, who had taken out 2 of those KOM points, and Hemmelin just taking out that horse category 6 points at the end, and on countback took the jersey for today. But he's moved on to 17 points, so got a nice lead now in that competition going into tomorrow.
So, thank you for doing the maths for me, Ian. You know that I'm a mathematical numpty, so you've worked that one out. Camilo Gomez moving right up in that classification, and it's an opportunity, maybe, by the looks of it there, Camilo Gomez just dropping out, having a little look at who's with him, just assessing things. This will be an ideal opportunity now to be taking on some energy, won't it, on this long descent. I'll roll you through again who they are as we look at them. The Norwegian national team for the 2nd day in a row, represented here by Peder Gravas, 21-year-old. And this is our Equipe Continental Groupama FDG team rider, their under-23 team, it should be noted, not their world team. And this is Ronan Augier, the Frenchman, 19-year-old. More teenagers in here, because Rohan Ravnoy, who we've just seen, there he is, another one of our 19-year-olds. And let's see, who else we're going to see roll through. This is our King of the Mountains, as I say, Vincent van Hemelen, 22 years of age, on that massive Eddie Merckx frame. By the looks of it, it's got a head tube like a touring bike. And that is Gianmarco Garofoli of Astana, Kazakhstan there. And that is all 6 riders. Oh dear, Ian Field. Something on our lens. We hadn't seen that coming. A little bit of rain starting to fall. I wonder whether Augier, they're calling for his rain jacket, maybe.
it was forecast, unfortunately, and it looked quite heavy coming in towards the back end of this stage. So the riders aren't going to appreciate this. Only 12, 13 degrees and a little bit of rain in the face as well. That's going to make things feel rather cold, but it's probably going to mean that the riders want to get on with things, want to get this one done and dusted today.
So they have about 60 kilometres downhill. Don't worry, it's not going to be boring, because our conversation will be riveting and the landscape will be breathtaking. Plus, we've also got that lovely blue Villiers to look at, which I'll never tire of. That paint job is the Astana, Kazakhstan. If they ever change that, I'll be most upset. Well, I won't be if they just send me one in the post, maybe, but enough about that. 60k downhill to bring us to the flat. And then we've got a few undulations in there as well, some spiky bits as well. We're also back-ending things again today, like we did yesterday, with 2 bonification points. And both those bonification points, 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds available. That's why this race historically has been won by punchy riders, including Mathieu van der Poel. In fact, the last time this race finished here in Hammerfest, it was van der Poel's teammate, the Czech rider Adam Taupolik, who was the winner here in 2018 at Hammerfest. And sure enough, Mathieu van der Poel in second place that day went on to win the race overall. But he's an interesting indication of the kind of rider who's brilliantly suited to this race. Someone who can climb comfortably, but who can take the bonus seconds out there on course and finish consistently at these finishes and pick up those bonus seconds too. Thinking about that, Ian, what can we read into yesterday's finish? Dainese and Hobbs, obviously 2 very informed sprinters, sprinting purely for the stage win. But in amongst that top 10, top 15, there's definitely some general classification protagonists there, aren't there, who are trying to get bonus seconds or get as high up as they could on the stage.
For sure, and I think those sprint points across the line yesterday before we got to the actual finish was a real good indication of a load of riders putting their hand up and saying, I'm going for the GC within this race. So we had the likes of Stevie Williams going for the sprint. Dylan Toynes actually went for the sprint of the finishing on the stage, so a previous winner of this race, looking eager to pick up some bonification sprint points, seconds available. So interesting, like you say, Johannesson was up there. He's noted down as kind of the bookies' favourite for this race. That was even with Leknesund starting, who we must point out didn't actually take to the start yesterday. The rider who was 8th on the GC at the Giro this year finished 50th at the Worlds. Anyone down in my book who finished the Worlds is in good form in Glasgow. So yeah, Johannesson up there as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens again today, because we don't know too many details. Once again, it finishes on a climb, but it isn't a classified climb. It looks like it drags for around about 2 kilometres, kind of 2-3%. And we saw yesterday's climb up to the finish. It was just enough for some of the sprinters to slip back, like our Blake Quicks of Jaco Lulu. Just lost position and then couldn't find his way back to the front with only around 200-300 metres to go once they crested that one. So I think he'll be looking to rectify things from yesterday. It looked like Stibar was on lead-out duties for him, doing a really good job. And I'm sure he'll learn from yesterday and try and put things right. But Noah Hobbs looked fast, but Dainese was just a little bit faster come the final 150 metres. And I'm sure it's going to be a similar kind of set of names going for the win today.
Yeah, let's see if it all comes back together again and what we're set up for. That run-in will be a little bit more interesting than yesterday, I think, because it's a lot less straight. And, of course, we're riding around the edge of an island there with a little wind pressing in against it as well. It might just stir things up a little bit. And the sprint just before we cross the bridge too, then another sprint with 11k to go. These are all little punctuation points that could provide openings, maybe. Ian and I have been referring to previous winners like Dylan Toynes. Let me just roll you back through, this race is 10 years old this year. I'll take you right back to Tour Hushot, who was the winner in 2013. But let's go backwards, shall we? None of last year's top 5 are here this year. And this is something which is increasingly, I notice, common in 4 to 6 day or 1 week races, in that riders tend not to keep coming back to the same race every year. They'll often do the race once, then dip out of it for 3 or 4 years, riding some other one-day races or changing their focus or being used differently by their team, and then coming back to it again. And that's possibly why we don't see any repeat winners of this race. The only returning champion from the race in the general classification is Dylan Toynes, as Ian mentioned. So it was Leknesund last year with that brilliant final day win. It really was an incredible solo victory last year. Ben Hermans, the Belgian rider, was the winner in 2021, riding for Israel. Israel Startup Nation, I think it was, back in 2021. I have to roll back through their different names. Alexei Lutsenko was the winner in 2019, ahead of Warren Barguil and Chris Nylands, again giving you that indication of the kind of lightweight, sprinty, punchy riders that go well in the Arctic Race of Norway. 2018 was the last time the race came in this direction and went a long way northward. It was Sergei Chernitsky, the Russian rider, who was the winner back in 2018, ahead of Marcus Hulgaard and Colin Joyce. Dylan Tern's the winner in 2017, Gianni Moscon 2016. Rain Teramai was the winner, the Estonian, in 2015, Stephen Kreiswerk in 2014, and Thor Hushovd, I should say, the winner in 2013, and now still very heavily involved in the race organisation. We saw him on the podium yesterday too. A race that Alexander Kristoff, the great Viking himself, has never won, although you wouldn't necessarily expect him to be winning stage races. However, he was second. This is bizarre, Ian, this is one of these wonderful ones. Alexander Kristoff in 2014 was second to Stephen Kreiswyk. Two more contrasting riders you could not get, and yet it shows the differences that can be made in the moderate hills and mountains in the north of Norway, but then also the amount of bonus seconds that can be picked up by a very, very good sprinter like Alexander Kristoff. It is getting that bit murkier. Rain jackets have been donned, both in the breakaway and in our chasing peloton. So a thumbs up there from Peder Gravas in his home race, riding for his national team as well. Once again, Ian Field, I think for the second day in a row, in fact, I said yesterday's breakaway was predictable in that we had two Norwegians and then we had, mostly continental and pro team riders in there. Today's break is even more predictable. I reckon you or I probably could say, well, if it's going to be a predictable break, who would be in there? You would say, well, the King of the Mountains will be in there, and two or three guys who are also high up in the King of the Mountains competition from yesterday. Sure enough, yes, they are. And then a Trinity rider. That's no great surprise because they're always so keen to show themselves in races like this. Maybe the only surprise in there for me might be the Astana rider, Garofoli. Wasn't necessarily expecting that. A world team rider in there, and an Italian too on this terrain. In this weather, dare I say it too, as well. No surprise to see a Norwegian national team rider in there, though, of course, as well. So it's that magic number of 6 again, which I don't know what you're thinking. I always think 6 is just seems to be the perfect breakaway number for rotation and for allowing one or two people to be off the back, messing with their back pocket and that sort of thing. 6 seems comfortable.
Yeah, it's a nice working number, isn't it? It's not too big that kind of people end up skipping turns or anything like that, and not too many from the same team to kind of disrupt things as well. So yeah, like you say, almost the perfect number, and I don't think it's any coincidence that Uno X and DSM would have been controlling kind of who got in this and how many were allowed up the road in the break formation part of the stage, and so only allowing 6 up the road, which is also at the same time a manageable number from the peloton's point of view. So a very large group going up the road, and only teams of 6, and a number of teams, well, DSM and Little Trek only started with 5, DSM only started with 5 because Leknesund not taken to the start. So you haven't got huge numbers to control a large breakaway, so only allowing 6 up the road is sensible from the sprinters teams as well, looking at it from that point of view. But right now, it looks like the riders have picked up a slight tailwind, so it is a crosswind for the majority of the day, which is, depending on their direction of travel, just switching a little bit between directly a crosswind and tail crosswind, and even a slight headwind as they head across to the island later in the stage. So yeah, I think the riders will be glad every time they turn and pick up a little bit of a cross tailwind, as we saw the shape of the peloton behind, just using half the road. Uno X just not allowing everybody to get the kind of the full feeling of being on the wheel, which is sensible from there. And if you're going to ride the front of the peloton all day, don't try and give the rest of the peloton the entire road to shelter behind you. So just making things a little bit more difficult for anybody that's on a bad day or just beginning to struggle for one reason or another. But yeah, like yesterday, breakaway of 6 working really well together. Nobody really sitting on and dodging things, and no one really doing the counter of driving it too hard and upsetting the rhythm either.
Yeah, we saw quite a lot of attacking in between those mountain points, and particularly on that second one, it looked to me, it was just before we came on air, Ian, I think, and I looked and thought, oh my gosh, this breakaway's doomed because they're smashing each other to pieces. But it's almost like a truce has been called now because they know the King of the Mountains points have gone. They've got an age until they get to Kvalsund. In fact, that bonus sprint is only just before we cross the bridge onto the island for the final 30k. It comes with 35k to go, that sprint. So really, they're just settled into being in we are the break of the day mode before they even start thinking about those bonus seconds later on. I wonder whether, of course, it'll all be revealed, whether they are caught by then or whether they stay clear until they get onto the island. And that could make for a really exciting chase. Once again, the peloton well wrapped up as well. I can't see any four-finger gloves at the moment, but most riders with mitts on. There's no arms out, are there at all, Ian? 12, 13 degrees. Definitely not a single bare arm in sight. You'd usually find, I guess, one rider who goes, yeah, I'll take my arm warmers off. Maybe look tough in amongst all these others, but none of it. Extra advertising space, the cynics would say, but that is the second unclassified summit where this Norwegian flag is blowing as well. So now actually they start the long. You can see the road, can't you? Just sort of staircasing its way down. That's the one. That was that second summit we've just climbed over. So we shouldn't always just talk about the classified climbs. It's sometimes the unclassified ones that really add to it. So that is the long, ever descending 60 kilometres ahead of them right now. And the guy on the front, by the way, Peder Gravas, I don't know what you think of him, but I think he's got a lovely profile in the wind. He's got a nice aerodynamic tuck, nice flat back, good position. He looks very smooth and in control as well. Actually, all of these guys look good at this stage. Big Johan Ravnoy here in his biggest gear, just mashing it along. We noticed that yesterday, didn't we? I think he's keen on leaning on that gear. He's a big, powerful rider. Looking back down the convoy, by the way, all of these cars you can see behind the riders, I mentioned this yesterday, but I'll mention it again here, all electrified. They're all electric cars. There aren't any gas-guzzling cars on this race at all. I saw a few clips yesterday of teams putting the bikes on the roof rack, and of course these are not their own cars and not their own roof rack, so not quite as quick with the changes as maybe they might have practiced away from this race. That is one thing to consider. A little bit slower. That is funny. I don't know if you just saw that there. Ian, Thomas Champion being told by one of his fellow riders on the front, I think it was Romain Combeau, the two Frenchmen, Combeau just reaching across and saying, pull your peak up, man, what's wrong with you? Flipping his peak up. Of course, he'd had the peak down when it was raining, and I think now it isn't raining as we look down on the reindeer. Thank you, by the way, those of you who sent us some correspondence overnight. One of them was about the flag we saw flying yesterday. We did see the Sami flag. There are a few of you that mentioned you'd gone away and looked up what it looked like, and to help me describe it a bit better perhaps, red with the circle in the middle and a line through it. I mentioned I thought I saw a Devon flag. Now, I think this is reliable correspondence, and now I've forgotten who sent me this, but somebody tweeted me and told me that the Devon-like flag, that green flag with the cross on it, is an alternative Sami flag. So I hope they are not pulling my leg, but that's what I've had reported to me. We'll keep an eye out for it. Certainly yesterday there were loads of Norwegian flags, and we saw a few of those Sami flags as well, the flag of the indigenous northern Norwegian people, of which so much of this stage and the coming stages is celebrating as well. Well, big welcome to our Eurosport friends who are joining us on this coverage. Our digital coverage started a little while ago, just when we were going over the last of our King of the Mountains points. My name's Jez Cox, and I have Ian Field with me. This is stage 2 of the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway. And you've tuned in for just yet another absolutely stunning views, looking across the field here, looking northward, I believe, in the direction in which the riders are riding today on this second stage. We have Alberto Danesi, the Italian DSM rider who is leading the race after winning stage 1 in Alta. We started in Alta this morning in this constantly northerly race, making its way in a northerly direction, all the way up to Nordkap, the North Cape, on Sunday, the most northerly part of mainland Europe, and finishing literally where the land ends on Sunday. Today, though, making its way out to the island of Kvaluya, and finishing in Hammerfest. A little loop around Hammerfest. Yesterday's was the only stage of 4 that has any finishing loops. You could quite easily have put a finishing loop into today's finish, but not in this instance. And by the way, if you're recognising this waterfall from yesterday, I'm not going to comment on it as if we're seeing it live, because we're not. These are pictures from yesterday. We're having a few problems in amongst the low cloud and wet weather, bringing you live pictures at the moment. We are just going back to those live pictures now, but as you can see, they're just breaking up a little bit as the weather's come in a bit and made it a bit testy, linking up our live pictures to our aerial shots over above as well. So if we do cut away from them, I'll do my best to inform you on what was yesterday and what is today. This is today, though. We're into a long 60-kilometre downhill section after the plateau we've been climbing up to, and it will take them closer and closer to those 2 final sprint points of the day where there are bonus seconds available. The general classification for the Midnight Sun jersey as it stood going into this stage: Alberto Danese leading from Britain's Noah Hobbs, the Group Armour FDG under 23, who was sitting 4 seconds down, and Lewis Bauer also on 4 seconds down. You should be seeing it on your screen right now. The riders' faces on the front of the jersey. I should point out they don't print them a jersey with the rider's face on, although that would be that would look amazing as they sit up and take the victory. That would look rather impressive. Just pull the jersey over their head. Yes, that's our 4 leaders. Noah Hobbs is wearing that blue points jersey that actually belongs to Alberto Danese, and Vincent van Hemelen is in the breakaway wearing the Peacock King of the Mountains jersey. This is our breakaway. I'll just talk you through who it is. Digital viewers, apologies for once again rolling through this, but we've just been joined by our good friends on Eurosport, and so I'll tell you who they are. This is Gianmarco Garofoli, who's about to pull on his rain cape. They have, as you can see, 3 minutes. They did have 4 minutes. They've lost a minute since they went over the last King of the Mountains point. In there with Garofoli is the Norwegian national team rider, the Norwegian, surprise, surprise, Peder Gravas. And he has with him Vincent van Hemelen, who is in the Peacock jersey as leader of the King of the Mountains. And the other 3 are Johan Ravnui, who was in the breakaway yesterday, riding for the Danish team, Team Coop Repsol. He is a Norwegian. And there's a Frenchman in there today too, Ronan Auger, riding for Equipe Continentale Group Armour FDG. That is the under-23 Group Armour FDG team. Trinity Racing rider, we had one yesterday, and it was Fergus Browning, the Aussie. Today, it is one of their 2 Colombians in the race, Camilo Gomez, who's in there representing Trinity Racing, the British team. That's the front of our chasing peloton, who are now just under 3 minutes behind in these now slightly damp conditions, making their way northward, going northward through Finnmark. So that's you up to date. Thank you for joining us here on Eurosport. As I mentioned, I've got Ian Field with me. Ian, I haven't done this to you yet, but maybe I might get you to stick your neck out. Is this going to be another bunch sprint like yesterday, do you think? Or are we going to have a bit more of a sort out before then? I know there's so much yet unknown, but what's your hunch?
My hunch is, I don't think I've even sticking my neck out here. I think it's going to be a bunch sprint. And I think I'm going to go one further. I'm going to say Danese's going to win again.
Oof, right. He did look good yesterday. I must admit, I'm not sure what the finger to the lips was about. But it's certainly hoping maybe to, well, by the looks of it, silence someone. I'm not entirely sure who, but it was a good victory by Dainese yesterday. And it does appear to be the strongest sprinter in the race. So as we look across the field, again, I'm just going to apologise for not picking up too many live pictures of our breakaway because we are losing a few of them. So we're going to keep a slightly stiller shot rather than pixelating everything. But there they are as we fade back into seeing them. Under 100k to go now. And they are starting to lose time, Ian, as they ride into this headwind. It's much more exposed where they are now. They've come away from the hills. They're getting a bit more of a hit of the wind. We've got a micro echelon forming right there, haven't we? The rain jackets have gone on, and just like that, they've lost 90 seconds pretty quickly.
Yeah, you could see from the images behind of the peloton, they were just beginning to get a little bit nervous about this crosswind, and Cofidis had come to the front and just started to up things ever so slightly, and that caused a little bit of panic from behind, and every team now is going to be hearing from teammates, from DSs, pay attention, get to the front, get your good position. So yeah, just a little bit of panic from behind, anticipating any splits in the peloton as Uno X now begin to drive things. It looks like DSM and Uno X are going to try and split this one in the crosswinds.
Yeah, they're pushing. You can see from the faces of the riders just thinning down now to 2 lines, and then behind that front bubble of riders, 1 line as well. Dylan Tuns moving up, taking with him yesterday's late attacker as well, Daryl Impey, the South African. I mentioned that so far. He had a fine late flourish yesterday to try and take the stage and look really good, Impey, but he's moving up. Interestingly enough, by the looks of it, being moved up by Dylan Tuns, and now Impey comes to the front. You can see Impey in the Israel Premier Tech. You are absolutely right, Ian. They've sensed blood here, and there's a thin pinch in the middle of that peloton. Fat and wide across the front, 2 wide at the back, but in the middle, down to 1 line, and that's where they'll hope to make the snap. It's a viciously cruel sport, ours, isn't it? Bunch of friends all out riding across the Norwegian countryside, and somebody has to go and do this.
It certainly is. It's not the biggest of bunches. We said yesterday only around about 100 riders at the start, so it doesn't take much. A split halfway down this one, and kind of 50 riders each side, as we see in Astana riding, letting the wheel go and causing a little bit of a split, maybe 20-25 guys going out the back of this one, and another group desperately trying to claw their way back to the back of that front half of the peloton. But yeah, Uno X and DSM have taken this one on. Look at the panic behind.
Absolutely desperate, isn't it? There's a couple of riders there. I think it might be one of the DSM riders. It's certainly a tall Lidl Trek rider. Also, it's not just this. You can see from this shot here, it's those little rollers as well. The rollers combined with the wind, making this tough. And look at the speed of the Uno X riders on the front. They're actually sprinting. So they're getting the signal in their ears that it's working. Keep piling the coals on because it's working. And it's not just splitting the group. It's putting riders right out the back as well.
Going to have to keep an eye out for numbers of these riders going out the back of the peloton right now, because if anyone's been caught out from the GC names, this could be their Arctic Race of the North over with only 4 days, 2 days of racing left after this. If you lose minutes now with 90 kilometres to go, and there's a good number of riders out the back of this one already.
Yeah, I was not expecting this, Ian. This is kicked right off here. We can forget the breakaway for a moment. Crikey, look at that. They've got less than 2 minutes now. 1 minute 43 back to this group. So all of this smashing by Uno X at the front is literally woofing down the breakaway's lead as well. We've got a little echelon forming at the very back, desperately hoping to pick up. And you can see riders ahead of them going, well, look, we've got a nice size echelon. 20 riders maybe? They're coming up behind me. I'm going to wait for that and try and jump in it. But are they going to jump in it and contribute? That's the question. I must admit, with all the rain jackets on, it's so hard to tell exactly what teams are in there, because some teams are wearing yellow rain jackets, most are wearing black. It's not easy, this race, in these cold and wet conditions, is it, to pick out exactly where everyone is. Uno X, very easy to spot because they are mixing it right up.
It really isn't, but there's only kind of 10-15 guys getting any sort of shelter from that first echelon, and it takes a huge amount of confidence from a rider who's maybe 20 riders back to pull out and form a second echelon. But that's the thing you've got to do. You see it now happening at the back of the race. If you're just stuck in the gutter, you're taking all the wind along with everyone else behind you. If you pull out and start a second echelon, it puts you actually in a better position of actually not losing as much time, as we see. Yeah, riders all over the place out the back, but it's so much easier once you form that second echelon. But everyone just refuses to do it and just gradually goes out the back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is, as Ian mentioned yesterday, it will have been quite a shock these last 2 days, just yesterday and today, for some of the riders who are coming from a much warmer climate. Wherever they've been racing, they might have been racing in Spain or in the south of France. Some of these riders, of course, riding the Tour de France just a few weeks ago in the baking heat in the centre of France. And then coming to what has been at times, I think when they started this morning, about 11 degrees. And that shot looking from behind, certainly if we were in England, where you and I come from, Ian, I would have said that's sort of the south of England in early January, club run. all dressed up, someone just left the cafe and put the hammer down. But no, this is August in the far north of Europe, well north of the Arctic Circle. And understandably, as you'd hope it would be and expect it would be at this time of year, it is properly hard conditions. Cold, windy and wet at this point. So 106 riders started this morning. Everyone finished yesterday's stage, thankfully. Andreas Leknesund, our defending champion, was the one non-starter yesterday. This might cause a few more problems for riders today, particularly those who are drifting off the back to finish within the time cut. The merciful thing about it, though, is that this is the shortest of all 4 stages at 100 and... sorry, Ian, what did we say? It was 153k, so it's not a killer distance. In fact, none of the stages of this race are that long. The longest stage is the final stage, and that's 170k. And going by other European 4 and 5 day races, a lot of them have 200k stages, so this is quite generous. Maybe indicative of it being that bit colder as well, not being out there for quite so long in these quite contrasting conditions to what most of these riders would have been doing the rest of the year. You would expect, I guess, Ian, we would expect the Norwegians, the Scandinavian riders, to thrive in these kind of conditions because it's what they're used to.
For sure, and I think looking back at that second group on the road now, or sorry, third group on the road, I keep forgetting about the breakaway, but they're soon going to be mopped up at this rate, down to 49 seconds. A number of riders from Little Trek in that final group on the road, and one of the riders that I did manage to pick out was Brustenga, who had a fast finish on him yesterday. He was looking pretty good. I think he was top 5 on the stage, so he's one rider to miss out already.
Yeah, he was 4th, wasn't he, the Spaniard? In fact, one of 2 Spaniards up there in that top 5, along with Antonio Angulo, who I've been really impressed with the last few years, the Burgos Biache rider. Brustenga chasing to get back in if he's to be involved in that bunch sprint finish. You've stuck your neck out, Ian, as I asked you to. You always do. You're very good like that. Not all my co-commentators do, as you'll know from over the years listening. I've got 1 or 2 that I have to squeeze very hard, and they still refuse to give me anything. But you're excellent like that. You can stick your neck right on the block along with me, so I ought to do exactly the same. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick Noah Hobbs to have really grown in confidence overnight, seeing how well he went yesterday in that sprint finish. He's already had some fantastic under-23 results over the last year in some of the biggest under-23 races in the world as well, but he's not, as far as I can see, I don't think he's yet won, certainly at this level, and he was very close to it yesterday. So I just wonder whether Equipe Continental Groupama FDG, his team, might get behind him even more today maybe and see if they can get him into a good place. It just depends, I guess, and this is what we'll find out when we get onto the island where we're finishing, is how tough is that rise. We'll see it coming as they then go sort of right-hand turns around that finishing lake. We'll see the climb coming. That'll give us an indication if it's back together by then. But right now, what Ian and I'm not entirely certain of is who has made it into this front split. Daryl Impey is adding his bit, so, hello. That's a smaller front, would you say? Or they're a similar sized group, Ian, the first and the second group?
So all in one picture now, we have the breakaway just at the front, and then, like you say, 4 groups of similar sizes, I would say. One rider I did manage to pick out who isn't in the front group, and one of the big favourites for GC is Odd Christian Eiking. He's... I don't know which echelon he is in, but it's certainly not the front. I did manage to spot Noah Hobbs, I think last man of the first echelon. So he's done the first big job of the day, forcing himself into that front echelon. And yeah, our breakaway is going to be mopped up a lot sooner than we initially thought.
86k to go though, Ian. I think if we were talking with like 50k to go, I could see it sticking like this, but it's a long way to go. But it just depends. But that can mean one of 2 things, can't it? It can mean either if they've not got the chasing right in that second or third echelon, then they end up losing 7 minutes. Or, because they're so desperate to get back in and the front group realise they can't keep this going for another 85k, that things calm down a little bit. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to watch that one, I think. We're looking down on a Sami church, by the way. It was originally built in Kautokeino, where we started yesterday, and it was moved to where it is now. Literally picked up and moved there by road. Beautiful, isolated church. So here we are with our field of 106 riders absolutely battered to pieces and just about to catch the breakaway, just like that. It's a little bit of a shame for our hard-working breakaway as well. Yes, they were out there, most of them, to try and pick up King of the Mountains points, but I think they would have thought they were hanging on. We thought they were hanging on until this happened. The wind has really pushed. It's not. I don't know whether it's the wind blowing harder, Ian, or whether it's so exposed where they are right there. They've been in amongst those rolling hills, didn't they? And suddenly they've come into this long descent where the ground speed is quite high, but they've got that same wind ripping in from their left. There's our poor old breakaway. I say poor old, they might just be about to be absorbed into a leading group which goes on to form the whole general classification this week, and that would be rather lucky, wouldn't it?
I was going to say they might find themselves just being absorbed into the race-winning move of this Arctic Race of Norway. So, yeah, if I was them, I'd be getting to the right-hand side of the road, getting as much shelter as possible from that group coming up from behind. But it looks like the front group is just beginning to stick it in the gutter once again a little bit, only using half of the road. There we see Hemmerlin doing the right thing, getting to the right-hand side of the road, because then as that group comes past you, you pick up the draft from them and get shelter from that crosswind. It gives you a bigger chance of staying in that front echelon and being able to get in there using less energy than those riders going down the left-hand side of the road, having to sprint to get back onto the back of that. But unless they got told that the race was completely in pieces, then it's probably one of those situations where perhaps you'd look round and almost be surprised to see only 20-25 guys at the front of this one now.
They're riding alongside the Repa Fjordelva, which is one of the rivers that runs between two fields. The good news is, from my mapping anyway on VeloViewer, I think they're about to come into slightly more forested terrain as well, with a bit more trees around. You can see trees to the right, see some little tufts of trees to the left, and if my mapping is accurate, they're going to get a little bit more shelter here as they follow the Repara Fjordelva. He said with an Italian accent. I'm not entirely sure why. But I think they might get, there we go, you can just see it, getting a little bit more shelter. Quite what that will mean, I don't know, as to whether they can, that will give a bit of impetus for those who are in that second and third group to try and close back up. This is the second group on the road. The first group, no it isn't, is it? Or is it? Yes it is, it's the second group on the road. The first group has caught the breakaway. And we're being told 35 seconds back to this lot, where we can see it with our own eyes over their shoulders as well. They're still rotating in two lines in that big echelon.
One rider to miss out, Stevie Williams, at the back of that echelon. So he's missed the split, and he's one rider that we would think about when it comes to GC for this sort of race. A punchy climber who's got a decent sprint on him as well. So unfortunate from the Welshman there.
Yeah, he looked very good yesterday. In that, both in the final sprint and in the finale as well. So this is the front of the race now. Roger Adria, the super talented Spanish climber for Equipo Kianfama that you mentioned yesterday, Ian, he's definitely there. That's him. And you can just see tufts of ginger hair sticking out the top of that helmet in the dark green. This is Daryl Impey rolling through. And then come Uno X, who seem to all be here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tobias Johannesson is at the back, second from the back of that group, because they have the Norwegian champion Fredrik Dvernes sitting back there too. This looks like it might be a Sea Eagle. It's not in focus, actually, a little bit difficult to tell. Actually, it could be. Ooh, not entirely sure what that is. Some of our... Ian?
I'm going to say it is an eagle.
I think it is. It's not an osprey. I don't think it's an osprey. It's a bit too big to be an osprey as well. But somebody watching will know. It's difficult to tell, though, because particularly in this part of the world, they tend to have a slightly different plumage as well. A little bit lighter and whiter to blend in with, lighter and whiter terrain, particularly when it's icy and snowy. Is this Stibar rolling through on the front?
Stibar's made it. Brilliant crosswind rider, and Noah Hobbs come through to the front, so we're getting a good idea of who has made the split. Hemmerlin, Dylan Toynes in there as well, just trying to spot faces. That Gillian Matan as well, so a number of riders who we would think about for the GC and even the stage win today have made this split.
Yeah, I didn't see where Martin finished yesterday on the stage, actually. I thought, because he's got a decent sprint on him as well. I'm just rolling down. He was 25th. Same time, as the winner, but there was a few there who I mean, obviously he's out of the bonus seconds there, so it doesn't really matter. He just needs to finish in that leading group yesterday. But we talked about yesterday's finish as being indicative of those who had general classification aspirations for their team. I thought it was interesting. Remember at the back of that string yesterday, all the way into the finish, Uno X, who were doing all that work, as they are now, seemed to be protecting Martin Urienstad, and I haven't seen him come to the front yet either. He is their smallest rider. This is not him here on the front. He's much more compact than the others, Urienstad, and he was their best finisher yesterday as well in 8th. I just think the fact that we've not seen much of him might indicate, it could of course indicate he's not feeling very good, but I think it might indicate that they're thinking about him this week, Urienstad. I'm going to keep an eye out for him in there. I think all the Uno X riders are here, all 6 of them. We'll watch that though. Arkea Samsic now rolling through. Sorry, that's Cofidis. That's one of their red rain jackets there. Actually, I haven't seen too many Arkea jerseys in here. There's me reading the red jersey. Of course, I should read the arm warmer. It's a Cofidis rider. We'll look to see how many Arkea riders in there, because they had Clément Champoussin, who was 3rd at the finish yesterday, picking up those 4 bonus seconds as well. But also in that top 10, they had Kevin Ledanois, the Frenchman for Arkea Samsic. Well, both Frenchmen in that top 10 in Arkea Samsic. They also had, just outside the top 10, nobody, because I'd imagined that. I thought there was another Arkea rider up there yesterday. We'll keep an eye on that front group just to see. I'm not sure there's any in there, but it might be the old rain jackets causing problems for us, Ian, I think. We need to guide us to exactly what rain jackets have been given out to which teams on a day like this. Try and work it all out.
Always a difficult situation when the riders are wrapped up against the elements. Obviously can't see the back numbers, so we're left desperately searching for that number that's on the seat post of the bikes to give us an indication of who's in there. But we have managed to pick out some names, some interesting names. I know I went through this yesterday, but Stibar returning from that operation, that pinched artery within the hip. He hasn't competed since Amstel Gold Race, so he's returned to racing here, and he looks in great form. I mentioned it yesterday. He'd been training really hard. I follow him on social media, and he'd ridden from his home in Belgium all the way back to his hometown in the Czech Republic, where he owns a hotel, Stibby Pension. So yeah, he's been getting the kilometres in and clearly got some good form, because he looked great on that climb up to the finish yesterday and positioned beautifully today to find himself in that front echelon as we get some shots now. That is Stevie Williams at the back, no gloves on, obviously not feeling the cold coming from where he does in South Wales. Yeah, he looked good yesterday, didn't he, as well? Just returning to your point there, Ian, about returning from injury, I maybe put my foot in it a little bit yesterday by suggesting it's been strange that Amund Grøndal Jansen, the Norwegian for Team Jayco Alula, has been so quiet for so long. Well, it turns out there's a good reason for that. I hadn't realised he'd been off for so long, but we had I had some correspondence or overnight saying, "Oi, Cox, you numpty, didn't you know he's been out injured for at least the last year?" You looked it up, Ian, as well, and it is since last year's Tour de France he's been out. Amund Grøndal Jansen around about then. Yeah, I mentioned it yesterday. Good friends with his coach, and I didn't even have to prompt him in the end. He was listening in, he was watching the coverage, and he texted me, I think even before the stage had finished, that Amund had some trouble with the iliac arterial scarring, which sounds, painful. Sounds rather a delicate and probably a difficult kind of thing to diagnose even. So he's had a number of corrective operations, and the Tour de France last year was his last race. Since the end of June, he's been able to train unrestricted from those problems, and apparently training has gone really well since then. So it'd be interesting to see. It's obviously an awfully long time not to put a number on your back, but we'll see what he's got this week, and I'm sure he'll go from strength to strength now once those medical complications have been diagnosed and hopefully cleared up, and he can return to kind of what we saw him achieve in his younger years.
Yes, absolutely. Really impressive rider, Amund Grøndal Jansen. Just unfortunate for him that collided with his time at Jumbo-Visma, all of that happening as well. So we wish him well on his return to racing as well. Keep a little eye out for him too. can't be easy, Ian, I'd have thought. What's the longest time you've been out for injury in your racing career when you were racing?
I had a knee operation when I was under 23, and so that was 6 weeks off the bike. So probably pretty similar to most people who have broken a bone. The only thing was returning after literally not being able to do anything with that leg just meant that it took quite a while to get back from that, but returned reasonably quickly. And yeah, it's probably the longest 6 weeks ever.
Yeah.
Not being able to touch your bike, just being able to do a few gym sessions, like one-legged stuff, etc., is quite a frustrating time, especially for a young rider. So kind of know what, like a tiny part of what he's been through. I imagine a long period of time with him would have been very frustrating, not even knowing what the problem was, just having these issues and not being able to perform to kind of the level that he knew he should be at.
How old were you, Ian, when you had that time out?
21, so fairly young.
Yeah.
But I think it was good in the long run. It set me up for little setbacks along the way. It's not a smooth kind of thing. It's not a conveyor belt that you jump on and jump off the other end, a multinational champion. It's ups and downs the whole way, as it is for all the professionals that we see on our screens today.
Yeah. I'll give a little shout out, by the way, to a British friend of mine. I'm sure you'll know him, Ian, as well. Tom Portsmouth, who's just been out for most of this year with a broken hip. Just returned to racing, the youngster. He's similar age. And he races with the Bingo Wallonie Bruxelles under-23 team this year. Had such a great start to the season, proving his worth as a very strong rouleur and a top sprinter as well. But then had a nasty injury and is only just returning to racing. So there'll be plenty of other riders just like that, but I've kind of followed his progress as a young British rider, and it can't be easy as well when you're racing as an under-23, where, as we were talking about yesterday, actually any level of the sport as a professional or under-23 rider as well, it's so cutthroat in terms of getting places on a team, proving yourself, and then getting a contract for another year. So any time out like that must make any one of those riders nervous. But I've mentioned Tom anyway, so all the best to Tom and his return to racing. He's just started back, I think, with his first pro Kermes in Belgium this week. It was a bit of a baptism of fire, but good to see him back at it. Well, the chasing is still on. Look at that long, thin line of that second group that we're looking at right now. Still trying to get back in, but it's saying 45 seconds. And wouldn't you know it, they're pretty much all wearing rain capes, so it's quite hard to tell who is in there. But did you say you think Stevie Williams is in this group?
So it looked like Group 2 on the road and Group 3 have come together now, and that's what they're calling the peloton, as Group 2 on the road at 43 seconds. And yeah, Williams is definitely in this group, but it looks like there's at least a number of riders in there willing to pull on the front of this one, desperately trying to bring this one all back together. Obviously not happy with the situation, not happy with the makeup of that front group. Yeah,
I think there's quite a lot of Arkea Samsic riders in there too. They're wearing black rain jackets but a red base to their tops as well. I think they're one of the teams that's missed out on this breakaway. Welcome back, those of you who've been away on a break. This is being driven on, and what we'll do is start looking really for the teams that have big numbers here. We know Uno X do, because they're the people who made this happen. They did a Soudal quick step on everyone else, and it was I don't know if it was pre-planned, but it was certainly pushed into action, wasn't it, and made to happen. Daryl Impey moved up in very quick order to bring up Dylan Turns to get him to the front, not knowing whether there might be a second split. He's missed his bag there as well. It's gone right under the other riders. Thankfully, everyone's rolled over that.
First cycling race in the world that's only using electrical cars. 130 cars are ready for the cycling teams and the organization. The big challenges that we have in the north, it's big distance and it's not a lot of charging point. This is something that we could have been doing if we not have good help from Camp Power that's delivering the charger, but also the local electrical power companies that are making it possible for us to take out capacity when it comes to the electricity. And again, with our car partner, new car partner, Xpeng, that only produce electrical cars, we can say that we have been taking the big step and using only electrical cars. This is something that we are proud of, and we see that other sports are looking to us, how we have done this, and we love to share our expertise on it. So the future are electric, and we are taking a big step for this. Thanks to our car partner XPeng, Camp Power, and all the local power companies, we made it.
Yeah, XPeng, the new car partner for the Arctic Race of Norway this year. They last year were almost entirely, but not entirely electrical in amongst the race convoy, and they're very proud to say this year it is an entirely electrical race as well, and never more poignant than in a part of the world where we're seeing glaciers that we would have been able to see already from this far north much more clearly, getting smaller and smaller. And when we get out onto the island of Kvaluya for the finale in Hammerfest this afternoon, you'll see it live. We should be able to see two of the glaciers if the cloud has lifted enough as well. And look at that rise. It looks almost like a mountain from here, Ian, doesn't it? And it will feel like a mountain for that lot who are still in an echelon and grappling for wheels.
Yeah, they've been pushing on into that crosswind for quite a period now. But that gap is coming down, 36 seconds to the peloton behind. And like we said, when it's split, it's an awfully long way to go to the finish line. And who's going to keep driving it? It's going to fall onto Uno X's shoulders mainly, and DSM looked eager to push on, but quite a few number of riders sat on the back of that first echelon, and that's going to kind of discourage things. We went through the feed zone and people, grabbing bottles and bars and gels, and it just took the emphasis out a little bit from that leading group, and the peloton have continue to press on through the feed zone. They know that they've got the cars behind, so they're not so desperate to pick up their musettes full of goodies for the latter half of this stage. So they've been pressing on through there and bringing that time gap down now. Human Powerhouse on the front of the peloton, working well with a number of other teams who, want to bring that first echelon back into the fold.
Human Powered Health with two riders in the top 10 yesterday, behind Alberto Dainese. They had August Jensen, who is a Norwegian and a former stage winner in this race as well. He was in 7th. And Colin Joyce, their American rider, in 10th. Oscar Skarsbrook is their press officer, and he and I have quite regular communication, Ian, and he confirmed for me overnight and this morning what we said yesterday, what you said yesterday, that their Human Powered Health women's team is safe for next year in terms of its financial status, and that they're hoping to make an announcement fairly soon about the ongoing future of the men's team. And of course they are, he didn't say this, but I presume from what he's saying that they're working on a number of fronts to try and secure the team, but that it is a little bit uncertain at the moment. But thank you to Oscar for feeding that information through to me. He also sent me a little video of their mechanic figuring out the new ways of mounting bikes on these cars, and they seem to have got it down to a fine art, but he was relaying to me that it's probably not as quick as it is normally, not because there's anything wrong with the racks on these cars, it's just they're different racks to the ones their mechanics are used to working with, and often in races like this, I must admit, it's another one of those green things. It's not just the fact that they're all using electric cars, it's the fact that they're not driving here in all their vehicles. It tend to be probably, one van or lorry that's carrying all the riders' bikes there. Most of the riders arriving at the start or ready for the start in Kautokeino yesterday, having got there by plane. There's nothing green about that, but at least they're not travelling enormous distances with loads and loads of vehicles. As we see that, probably not the same bird again, but yet another one of these fish eagles, I would suggest. Got a big old beak on it. We need some kind of scale here. We need a little sheep to come into view, although I hate to say it, I think if a sheep did come into view, it might be taken. That's a big bird. Yes, very big bird as well. But do you know what I mean, Ian? We've got no sense of scale there. It could be the biggest eagle in the world, or it could actually be a buzzard. But in amongst those trees, there's not much to scale it up with. Get one of the riders to ride over to it next time. I'll get on the radio.
I feel like it was quite a big bird.
It was a big bird, there's no doubt about that. I feel very disappointed in myself, actually, that I'm referring to, I pride myself on my ornithological prowess, ornithological prowess, and yet I'm calling it a big bird. I'm not sure what it is. Somebody tweet me what it is and be truthful. I think it's some kind of fish eagle by the looks of it. Hello. Oh, this is really... Gosh, look at the little group at the back there as well. Is that group... So that would be group 3. That can't be group 2, is it? That must be the back group now in the distance. What a shot.
Yeah, we're looking at group 2 right now, and there's a very small group out the back of this one. We saw riders being dropped fairly early on those crosswinds, and they've formed a little group right at the back of this one. It's going to be a long day out for those guys right at the back of this, and all these small unclassified climbs along the way definitely add up over the course of these stages. What landscape that is.
Yeah, beautiful little cabin. This is back to the front of the race. And Uno X still pressing on. Notably, I don't think any of the Uno X riders today in rain jackets either. They are making this one count on stage 2 of the Arctic Race of Norway, the shortest stage, 65k left to go. So in 30 kilometres time, there or thereabouts, 30k's time, we'll get to the first of our 2 finishing sprint points in Kvalsund, just before they go over the bridge to take them onto the Kvaluya Island and Hammerfest, where our finish is today. Just while we watch this stabilise a little bit, I don't normally do this. I'll try and normally pick out a few points, but this being an ASO race, the organisation that organised the Tour de France, the guidebook is so good and so deep and so well written. As we look at this rolling landscape, I just want to read you the entry about Hammerfest, where we're going to. Ian, if anything amazing happens, just jump in and stop me, because I'm going to be looking down at my notes and I don't want to miss something. Most people who come to Hammerfest expect to come to a small place with a harsh climate, and that's correct in many ways, but few people expect to find a micro-metropolis. Here you will find urban summits in all directions, local food such as first-class sushi, a cultural programme that you'd have to prioritise things to see, and heaps of lovely people, as does every guidebook. Now, the heaps of lovely people we'll put to one side because they all say that, but I'm sure they are. Additionally, the city is surrounded by a nature that offers intense experiences culturally. Hammerfest is part of an archipelago, and the city is located on Kvaluya. The surrounding islands, Sealand and Suruya, have no mainland connection. It can only be reached by ferry or express boat. Suruya is known as the Green Island of the North. Over half of Sealand is a national park with the northernmost glaciers on the European continent on it. The adventurers waiting for those who want to go off the beaten path are plenty. I'll skip that. Salmon fishermen, snowmobile enthusiasts and tough mountain bikers. In fact, the world's northernmost mountain bike race, the Skadi Extreme, takes place here every year in September, and the race is often a mud party where you will have the best of fun. Doesn't sound like a race to me. Fun on a race. Further away, over at the Hatta mountain pass, you'll find the Sea Sami village of Kokkelv and Kokkelv Sea Sami Museum. You can experience a small journey back through time. There we go. I won't read it out every day, I promise, but it's a well-written and lyrically beautiful guidebook that we have on this race. I always feel a little bit guilty of not reading out all the entries because there's so much detailed information in there. Big thank you to the organisers, ASO, who put that together. Those of you who follow the Tour de France will know that the ASO guidebook to the Tour de France is written by François Thomazeau every year, or has been every year anyway, and his detail in there makes for a book that you could just read even without watching the race and just follow it. And actually, I must admit, this ASO race here, the Arctic Race of Norway, is also extremely well put together in terms of detail of what we're seeing on our screens. However, this does look a little bit miserable. I wouldn't want to be in there right now. It's an awful lot of spray in your face off this still really smooth road by the look of it. 40 seconds to that second group. And this is the second group. One line up along the left-hand side, as I said they would be now, with a bit of shelter from the wind either side from these trees up in the forested section. Heading still northeastward. Won't be too long before they turn westward. They'll actually turn into the wind a little bit more, which at least will provide less opportunity for crosswind problems. But this is the chase at the front of that desperate second group.
while you're reading that out, I did manage to catch some names who have missed out, who are left in the peloton. Obviously going through at the front, who you mentioned yesterday, Sirius Monk, but also Matt Dinham, the rider from the World Championships, ride of the day for a lot of people. Bauer, so the breakaway man from yesterday, and Alieta from Equipo Kerner Pharma, who we pointed out yesterday. He signed for UAE, I think it is, in the coming years, and one rider with a big future ahead of him, 13th at the Under-23 Road Worlds in Glasgow. So, just a few names and numbers that we did manage to spot. Not completely covered up by rain capes in that peloton. It's stabilised around 40 seconds now, but really interesting. Is it coming under 30 seconds? Will the front group kind of look round and think this isn't really worth it, or just continue to keep pressing? Because it looks like DSM and Uno X are very happy with the makeup of rider they've got in the front split.
Yeah, DSM really pressing on now as well, increasingly so too. Don't forget, folks, we had a breakaway of 6 riders who were clear before all the crosswind stuff happened. They've been absorbed into this group, and I think they're all still in there as well. We've definitely just seen our King of the Mountains leader, Vincent van Hemelen, rolling through at the front. Happy to keep contributing to that as well, the Team Flanders Baloise rider. No more King of the Mountains points today, but he'll be aware, as will most, if not all of these riders, that this could even be the defining breakaway, if we call it a breakaway, leading group, let's call it, of the race. This could be the one that shapes it, which is why Uno X continue to press on. DSM happy to add a little bit to it too. And that looks like Johan Ravnoy as well going through again for Coupe. I don't know whether he's the only Coupe rider in here. That is incredibly difficult to tell because their colours are so similar to DSM. They ride with those white helmets on there, if that helps for us to pick them out. I'm looking to see which other Astana riders they have in there as well. Look at that grassy roof. That's something we saw yesterday. I think it's a grassy, like a tufted green roof to a lot of these houses. Such an effective way of insulating as well, planting on top of the roof. Nice to see a crowd out here at this junction as well to watch the race as it goes through. With 59 kilometres to go.
I think they're turning directly into a headwind for this short part of the stage. So that's going to go one or two ways with that chase group. That's either going to kind of knock the stuffing out of them, or they're just going to put their heads down and get on with it and try and bring that gap down, as we see at least one Cofidis rider out the back of the peloton going back. Have a word with the car maybe. I think tried to have a quick count up. It looked about 28 riders in that front split. So, still leaves the majority definitely behind, but as we saw, the peloton isn't everyone else in the race. There's definitely ones and twos, and even quite a large group out the back of the peloton.
Yeah, they're heading along the tributary river now. They've gone westward. They really are now heading towards the island where our end game will be played out today, and the next of our sprint points, which will come in about 10k's time, just over 10k's time in actual fact, before we get to that sprint point in Kvalsund. They are riding alongside the Repa Fjord. The Repa Fjord will soon be off to their right. They'll follow that right along the edge of it on their right-hand side before they get to that sprint point. The sprint point is just before the bridge, 700-metre bridge. I won't see too much of the fjord, I suspect. In these conditions, it will be a little bit bleak. As will that bridge crossing, I suspect, as well, to take them over onto Kvaløya. Our leading group of, we think it's somewhere between 28, 30 riders, don't we? And something like that, this group that we're... sorry, this is Group 2 we're looking at right now, isn't it? Thankfully, quite big, wide roads, so moving the cars into where they need to be, I think, has been a fairly simple process so far today. I think that group split again. Look at that, it's split again, hasn't it? This is Group 2 we're looking at, and it's split down the middle. I think there's a few riders here getting a bit fed up with this by the looks of it. You mentioned the mullet of Cyrus Monk. He was at the front, and now he's caught off the back in that second split, and really, they need to get on with this.
Yeah, I think that's just the headwind, meaning that it's just a little bit harder for the guys behind not really wanting to press on and just letting the wheel go because they don't want to do a turn at the front and sitting up, looking round, looking for excuses not to do a turn because they got riders ahead in that front split. And just means the cohesion's gone out of that peloton, gone out of that chase. And so I think on this part, the gap's only going to go out into this headwind as we see it up to 45, 46 seconds now. They had brought it down to around about 35, 36 seconds not that long ago. And then as soon as they've turned into this headwind, it's just completely fallen apart behind. It'd be interesting to see what happens now, whether they kind of regroup and bring it back down again, or this leading group's going to go all the way to the line.
We get a wave here from this fly fisherman making his way to the river. Now, this edge of the field here, I'm reliably told, and this is from our guidebook as well, it is home to one of the biggest collection of sea char. Now, a char is like a kind of a cross between a salmon and a trout, I guess, but it's a migratory sea game fish, and apparently sea char is like the is what is most prolific in the Repar Fjord, which stretches northward, stretches basically in the direction in which the riders are going. We're looking down on the thinner, shallower edges of it right now, and that angler choosing a particularly bleak and difficult day to be out there. Having said that, though, from what I read, particularly about the Sami people, Ian, they revel in these kind of conditions. I forget where I was reading this. I think it was again in our guidebook, reading up about the Sami people and their take on weather and stuff. And part of their take on days like this is that actually it's days like this where it's wet and moist that it helps to connect you with the beauty of the landscape, because of course the rain is where the greenness comes from, and so it's sort of, I think, historically adds to their sense of enjoyment at the great outdoors. We're watching two anglers fly fishing. Very, very shallow water as well, just casting their fly back across the top. I suspect seeing if they can catch some of those sea char. We are, of course, in pristine salmon country as well, so some of that catch will be for the dinner table, I suspect, as well. I can see young William Smith, who hails from just down the road from me, in actual fact. In fact, he spent quite a long time riding for a team based in St Albans in Hertfordshire, where I live. He is riding for Trinity. He's one of those young British riders, 21 years of age now. So actually, he's getting on a little bit now, Will. He was brought in at late notice to replace the Aussie, Will Thomas. Actually, sorry, Will is younger than that, Will Smith. It's Will Thomas who's 21. I think Will Smith is still only about 19, if I'm not mistaken. He might even be 18, actually. So I'm quoting the wrong age, sorry. I'll look up how old William Smith is, but he's definitely not 21. I think he might be 18, actually. Even another one of our youngsters in that very, very young Trinity Racing team. Very good all-rounder, brilliant crit rider, and a great bike handler too, as well. He, like I think most of the Trinity Racing riders, is wearing a kind of lime green Gabba-style jacket. I think that's what we call them, isn't it, Ian? Those ones that are almost like wetsuits, aren't they? That allow a little bit of water onto the material. That's Will sitting second wheel there in that kind of lime green short-sleeved rain jacket. The Trinity rider.
Yeah, that's awesomely versatile bit of clothing that you mentioned there. Kind of windproof, showerproof, but very versatile in terms of being able to wear it kind of even up to quite higher temperatures. So, yeah, it was definitely that sort of jacket my go-to kind of outer layer an awful lot of training days in the past, just because you could wear it right down to 2-3 degrees above freezing with a decent base layer underneath and maybe a short sleeve, and then even wear it up in spring, autumn time when in the UK probably 13-14 degrees, and yeah, you'd sweat a little bit more in it, but it would do the job, keep the cold wind off even on those days. So yeah, definitely looks like the go-to item of clothing for a lot of these riders. A lot of the teams have kind of a different version of that jacket. See the Cofidis rider going through on the front now, wearing his kind of own version of that, and Uno X stripped right down. This rider going through already down to his skin suit. Aero gains. So perhaps he was the rider earlier in the stage doing a lot of work on the front. Knew that was going to be his job today, so was stripped down and working hard from the off today, whereas other riders still wearing knee warmers, long finger gloves, gilets, etc. Weren't quite expecting this race to kick off quite so early, and now just a little bit stuck in terms of what clothing they're wearing. They're going to probably have to wear this all the way into the finish now. Maybe take off the gilet and perhaps an outer layer or two, but probably no time now to take off knee warmers, etc.
We're still following the front of that second group, who it's not really changed much. It's come down a bit. It was 50 something, wasn't it, Ian? Now it's 44 seconds to get back to these guys. There's that raglan jersey of the best young rider, Groupama FDG rider there, Lewis Bauer, with the red sleeves and a white top to it. It's quite an unusual jersey, that, but actually quite easy to spot as well. He had such a good day in the breakaway yesterday, the teenager, Lewis Bauer from New Zealand. They're crossing back over this little bridge here. It does, at this point, this pointy end of the fjord here, cross over it, I think, a couple of times in actual fact, before it then just literally follows the very edge. Yeah, that's us crossing the tributary to the Repa Fjord. And it's going to widen and widen all the time to their right before we then turn away from it and start to head towards the bridge that will take us over to the island and the finale at Hammerfest, finishing on the edge of a lake as well, turning all the time around the edge of the little inland lake, just inland, just to the south of Hammerfest itself. And I'll remind viewers again, a slightly uphill finish, dragging uphill for about 2k. And if it's this group who contest it, we've got some really good uphill specialists in here. We mentioned, didn't we, Roger Adria, the Spaniard for Equipo Kern Pharma. He's not just made this group, Ian, but he's quite evident as well. He's rolling through quite hard as well, the Spaniard for Equipo Kern Pharma.
I'm going to tell you a fact about that golf club because I read the book this morning and I liked it.
Really? Go on then.
It's one of the few golf clubs where you can play 24 hours a day in the summer as long as the light allows.
Gosh, of course. Yeah, of course. This is the land of the midnight sun at this time of year, hence our midnight sun jersey. And it must be quite nice. Actually, we were sent a photo. I think I retweeted it on my Twitter account at Jez Cox last night. Somebody took a photo of the North Cape, the kind of globe statue which is at the North Cape, which we'll see on Sunday, of course, having ridden the last part of their ride through the night to get to it. But of course, through the night basically means riding in sort of what to probably to us in mainland Europe is kind of late evening or evening sunshine in the summer in particular. Of course, this is the land that in winter sees not very much sunlight, but then in summer sees no end of it as well. Although it's not overly sunny today. I'm pleased to say that the forecast for the weekend is a lot better, and actually does look like it's stopping raining, although we've got wet roads here. It does look like it's stopping raining. The forecast was due to keep getting better from really midday today onwards, so fingers crossed we might be just rolling through the worst of this here. It won't be any problem for Zdeněk Stybar as he rolls through in the white and blue of the Australian team Jayco Alula. Jayco being an Australian manufacturer of very nice motorhomes, and Alula being a heritage site in Saudi Arabia. It's the focal point of the Saudi tour every year, which I've had the great pleasure of commentating on the last couple of years. It is, of course, the Green Edge team, as so many people know it. And a very multinational team as well nowadays, incredibly multinational, that team. Are they going to get back on? That's the big question. There are at least two, if not more, of the coupe riders. There's three I can see there in actual fact, getting involved with the chase back. There will certainly be some team managers back there as well, sitting in those cars watching this, hoping they do get back on and watching it unfold right in front of them. I think from the fact that young William Smith here keeps going through, I can see other Trinity riders behind him as well. I'm not sure how many riders they've got in that lead group. They've definitely got the rider that was originally in the breakaway, of course, Camilo Gomez, their Colombian climber. But we keep seeing Trinity riders rolling through. So apart from the fact that they're playing their part in this chase back, and Trinity always happy to be on TV and being seen as well, which is good. I think there's quite a few of them in that second group. Gosh, look at the gap though. Is that 43 seconds? Maybe it is. Always looks a bit shorter when we can see them in the same shot, doesn't it?
It does. Interesting. I think Trinity have only got one in that front group. So, yeah, their DS at this race, John Mould, years of experience, probably just doesn't like the numbers. So 27 versus 1 within that front group isn't the greatest of odds. So yeah, telling that young Trinity team to roll through on the front of the peloton, and they're doing a decent job. They're just stabilising things and just ever so slightly bringing that gap down now, down to 36, 37 seconds as the road ramps up ever so slightly. But there is some serious firepower at the front of this one. It looks like Uno X just being a little bit more cagey than they were earlier on in the stage when this first split. They were really driving it hard, all at the front as a team. And what happens now as the stage goes on, once that gap has stabilised, more and more riders in this front group beginning to sit on. And one rider that I'd recommend to sit on is Noah Hobbs. I wouldn't be rolling through if I was him. One of very few of the equipped Continental Groupama FDJ riders to make that front split. I'd be using all the excuses in the world to sit on the back of this one.
Well, big time. And he's got every right to as well. He may be riding for one of, well, I guess the smaller teams because they are a UCI Continental team, but also, without doubt, he's one of the best sprinters in the race. We know that from yesterday, so he has every excuse in the world to sit on there a little bit, but he might be doing, bear in mind, he might be doing what he's told to do, and it might not be his fault. He might be being told to do that, but it is, you're right, it would make sense for him to sit on there and wait, because it is, well, I guess it depends whether he and his team are starting to think a bit more about bonus seconds and general classification, because let's not forget, at the start of the day, he was still second on the general classification. The thing is, he also serves such a good chance of winning a stage that it just depends how this goes. Because let's say he did sit in and he wins the stage or comes second again today, then he's going to roll into the weekend, the second half of this race, still really high on the general classification. And just thinking ahead to the weekend, Ian, as we look ahead to the next two stages, I've actually been, I think it's quite hard to pick, for me, what's definitely, or if we definitely have some kind of Queen stage, a big stage where we expect it all to be decided. I mean, last year it all came down to that final stage. Sunday's North Cape stage is definitely back-ended, but we've got uphill finishes every day. There's two quite big climbs, including an all-category climb at the end of the North Cape stage. But I don't know what you think about the blend of the next 2 days in particular, and whether there is one hit-out stage where we might expect it to be decided.
Yeah, looking at it earlier today, I don't think there's one standout stage, like you say. I think actually Saturday and Sunday are very similar stages. They both have some longer climbs. They both have some climbs that have some steeper gradients on average. So I think 2 days where perhaps weather conditions could play a part. I mean, looking at today's stage, you wouldn't say it would split to pieces, but the wind got up, very exposed above the tree line there in the midpoint of this stage, and we saw the race just smashed to pieces. Although this gap is coming down, 34, 35 seconds. It looks like Israel now have gone to the front of this peloton. It looks like they're driving it hard up this little drag. They're, obviously not too pleased with the makeup, and as I said, Stevie Williams and Dylan Toynes, they're two GC guys, perhaps not happy with this makeup, as Uno X now sense that gap is coming down, so back to the front of this as a team, and they're going to drive this one on over the top of this drag.
Tell you what, if that second group does come back in, this has been an awful lot of work today, which, yes, has brought the breakaway back. Yeah, I don't know. You see, I'm just watching the face there of some of these riders, and I think it might be... family there got a little fire going to keep themselves warm at the side of the road. It is only about 12 degrees where the riders are right now, but these soaking wet conditions will have made it feel an awful lot colder too as well. But as always happens in the Arctic Race of Norway, despite the fact that we're so spread out, all these individual isolated houses we're going past through this expansive landscape stretching north of the Arctic Circle, still people turn up at the roadside, even in conditions like this, to watch their big race come past. The biggest UCI stage race in Norway, seconded only just, of course, by the Tour of Norway, which is a bit shorter than this one as well. Happens in May, as we mentioned yesterday. And this group, and the coupe riders in particular, using every little bit of the road, every undulation as well, to try and speed up a bit. 32 seconds right now. They cannot take their foot off the gas though, because if they do, as we see a bit of looking around going on, 32, the DSM rider, they're just saying, right, let's get on with it, roll through, because I think they'll want to get Lewis Bauer back in there, because he was looking so good yesterday, the youngster. Sorry, Lewis Bauer, I do apologise, I'm talking about FDG Continental. I'm not sure he's got much help back there in his Best Young Riders jersey that he's looking after for Alberto Dainese.
Interesting. I think that's Matt Dinham coming to the front and actually riding and trying to get a chase formed, even though I think he's the only DSM rider to miss out on that split. It might be one of those situations where he's just cold and he just wants to ride to stay warm, because from a tactical point of view, there's no reason for him to be riding right now.
No, absolutely. Matt Dinham, who, as we were mentioning yesterday, had just such an incredible Elite Men's World Road Race Championship, despite being one of the younger riders in that elite field. He was in that breakaway that went over the Crow Road and rode into Glasgow in the lead, and then was absorbed by that super elite leading group on that finishing circuit, and still went on to finish seventh behind Mathieu van der Poel, having been seventh in the under-23 race 1 year before that in Wollongong, Australia. It was quite a ride by Matt Dinham. Obviously got form to use here too, but finding himself, as you said, Ian, stranded a bit in that second group. But anyway, just to go back to it, if this does come back, there's a lot of energy expended by Uno X here today. I know this is their home race, but as we watch Noah Hobbs go through again in that points jersey, he is doing quite a lot. My pick for the day. Now that he's my pick for the day, I'm a little bit worried about him. Easy on those legs, hold it.
I think, like you mentioned, there's a big amount of energy expended, but Uno X were having to ride the front anyway, so they did press on when it split, but perhaps not as much energy as we're thinking.
Welcome back, those of you who've been away. These are the closing 44 kilometres of Stage 2 of the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway. We have a leading group who've been formed in a moderate but effective crosswind on our way northward in the direction of Hammerfest on the island that we're about to cross over to. And we're getting closer and closer to our penultimate bonification sprint as well, where there will be 3, 2 and 1 seconds available and 3, 2 and 1 points in that blue jersey competition that we see Noah Hobbs wearing. That second group is coming back though. So the front group you're looking at the right hand end of the screen there on that long road going alongside the fjord here, that is the group that caught the breakaway once the peloton had been split into three and some little drips off the back of it as well. So we're going to have a reforming of what we'll have to, I guess, now call the peloton. This is our leading group that we're looking at right now, pressed on still by Uno X, who were the naughty boys who stirred it all up in the first place. They sensed it coming, and I don't know, Ian, watching the way these teams are rolling, if Uno X hadn't done that, do you think anyone else would? And if so, who?
Well, I think Cofidis got a bit excited as well, didn't they? They were definitely a little helping hand to push Uno X into it. So I'm sure as soon as it was beginning to line out and everyone was looking round and thinking this could split here, I'm sure one of the teams would have flinched first and gone for it. But it was obviously Cofidis and Uno X that really pushed things forward, and then DSM, Jaco Alula all got involved, sensing it's one of those situations in echelons. It's actually easier to ride through than try and sit on the back of it, because you're in the gutter taking all the wind anyway, so you might as well ride through and give a turn. So yeah, interesting situation. Now see really good understanding of where that wind's coming from, that cross headwind that they've turned into now, and that peloton behind, all lined out behind the front kind of echelon as such. So just constantly this quite strong wind, as this is definitely going to come back together now. That front group's going to look round and think, well, that was an interesting 40-50k, but almost back to square one. Although got to bear in mind that poor group that's still out the back, probably in the convoy or even out the back of the convoy at this point in the race.
We can just see Romain Combo there, just taking his glasses off, looking around. Who's that? What are you lot doing? Where'd you come from? And there of course, he doesn't speak like that. He's French, but yes, it's all come to nothing at the moment. Although we say nothing, this is a stage race, and stage racing is meant to be attritional by nature, so everyone's had to work hard for that. Who's of the two groups coming together now, though, Ian? Who do you think's had that the easiest? The people who've sat in the front group, or the people who've sat in the second group? I know that's a hard question to answer, but I'm just thinking, if you could have been anywhere there to have something left at the end of this stage, where would you have wanted to be?
I would have been 10-15 back in that front split, because
not going through.
Definitely not going through.
No, just sitting in. Right.
Definitely explaining to everyone around me why I wasn't going through, how I had teammates in the back split, how I had some cramp, how I didn't have a very good night's sleep.
Couldn't get into the big ring and all that.
Exactly. How the DS has told me off for going through, etc. So, but it definitely looked like that front group was a lot smoother, going fast at times, but a lot smoother than that group behind, who was even splitting at times as we turned into that headwind once again. So, I think also when you're in that front group, you're sat there just a little bit more relaxed, because you're at the front of the bike race rather than perhaps being in the peloton behind, knowing that you're behind the race as such, and always having a little bit of panic, a little bit of anxiety that the race is getting away from you.
Someone's having fun out on the field, and then you can see how wide the field is at this point when we get to it. It's massive as well. Uno X, though, despite the rejoining, have continued to press on as well. I don't know whether they sense an opportunity to whittle this group down a little bit more. I thought they might have switched off at that point, Ian, but absolutely none of it. In fact, they're still looking around to see what's going on. So I don't know. Let's have a look. We're not far. Now, what we need to remember is we are now 6 kilometres away from the Kvaluga Bridge and the Kvalsund Sprint, the first of our 2 intermediate sprints, 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds available there. We've got 2 of them in the run-in now as well. This is going to be a really interesting final 40k. Do you think that's what they want to do? They just want to keep, whether it's Martin Urienstad or someone else, up and out of trouble, ready for this final sprint?
100%. With the bonus seconds on offer at these sprints, it just means that they're super important for the GC in terms of going forward. We often see this race won by seconds rather than minutes. The climbs aren't huge and they don't make for massive differences as such. So these sprint points along the way will add up over the course of the 5 days of racing.
So everyone, as far as we're aware, that came into the day in the top 10 is in this leading group. I haven't seen much of the purple of Burgos Biache, but they wear those very dark black rain jackets as well, so they could be pretty much anywhere in their sort of purpley shorts as well, purple and black shorts. The rider's so well wrapped up at this stage. We know that Noah Hobbs is definitely there. In fact, we can see the blue sleeves of his jersey poking out. Alberto Dernese, we still presume is in here, although we haven't seen too much of him. He's hiding well. Lewis Bauer, we know, is there because we've seen his white and red raglan jersey. Still looking, I think the Arkea Samsics just hide themselves well. I can't recall seeing an Arkea Samsic rider at all in this group. I don't know whether you have, Ian. I haven't noticed them. Looking for Clément Champoussin, who sits 4th on general classification after his high finish yesterday. He could be a really good pick for today. I was really impressed by him yesterday. I didn't realise that he had quite such a sprint on him. But anyway, this is Filippo Baroncini. getting his rain jacket back on. But yeah, I don't know if you've noticed any of the Arkea, Samsic. I know. Here we
Oh,
go.
there
Just
we
like
go.
that. One. There we go. Done. Well done, Ian. You spotted one. Not entirely sure
that
it was, but he was.
Kevin
Don't joke.
Ledenoir.
Oh, you saw the number. You must have seen the number. Well spotted. Ledenoir, who had a good finish yesterday as well, didn't he? He was in the top 10. He was their other finisher in the top 10 yesterday.
Slightly confusing that obviously red jerseys, but they're wearing the black rain jackets. So.
Yeah.
Along with Little Trek, who are wearing black rain jackets as well. So,
yeah. There we go. So, they're getting a little bit lower here, almost down to sea level, effectively. And let's not forget, they've got a little bit of climbing to do at the end of this stage. It comes in little lumps, particularly after that final bonification point, which comes with 11k to go. In that last 11k, there's lots of ups and downs as they make their way around the edge of the headland, all of which could provide potential little launch pads or snapping points for this field of, what do we reckon, Ian, 80 riders maybe? Could be less.
Yeah, I'd have thought around about 80, probably 20 guys still out the back of this one today. And like you say, that headland that they skirt round in a clockwise formation, as we see, that is Amund Janssen. The guy we were talking about earlier, his first race back since the Tour de France. Not this year, last year. So, a huge amount of time off. And great to see him in here and taking off his rain jacket. So he's getting ready for the end of this one. But as I was saying, going round that headland, like you say, there's a few little ups and downs and perhaps launch pads, but they will pick up a tailwind. So that'll give the advantage to the attacking riders. It's always easier to try and hold a gap with a tailwind rather than riding in. As we see in the distance, that bridge that we're going to go across.
Yeah, we're getting closer to that bridge, but we are now also just a handful of kilometres away from that next sprint point, which could be really interesting from a group of this size too. I would not be surprised if we see Uno X's Tobias Johannesson going for this, the 23-year-old. He did at the final one yesterday. We have about 2.5 kilometres to that sprint point, that bonification point. Blue jersey points up for grabs. Don't forget the blue jersey competition is kind of weighted. That points classification really towards the finishes, where there's 15 down to 1 points awarded for the first 10 finishers. But there are 3, 2 and 1 points at each of these bonification points. But this will be more about seconds because, as Ian Field mentioned, this race decided by seconds normally, so every one of these little points really important. Cofidis moving up. Guillaume Martin there, I think that is, by the looks of it, in the long sleeve red top. Uno X continue this. I tell you something, Ian, if they don't get something out of this stage, I think they've wasted a lot of energy today in cold conditions. And we've had this conversation before, you and I, haven't we, about what a wet day can do to some riders' legs. Not everyone, but I know me, if ever I raced in the wet, it would just make me seemingly twice as sore the next day. Don't know why. Not everyone gets that, do they? But some do. And if there's anyone in that Uno X team that's weakened after this is a lot of wind they've been taking today. And at the moment, I don't know. I just can't see anything they've gained from it. I know they could have gained a lot from it, but now it's all back together again, and they continue to go for this. Let's hope someone gets some bonus seconds here.
Yeah, it's almost like because it's a Norwegian race that they feel as though the responsibility falls to their shoulders, but I'd have definitely been looking to DSM today. You have the fastest guy in this race, you have the yellow jersey, you do the work into this headwind, into these crosswinds today, but fair play to them and taking responsibility, and we'll see towards the end of this stage whether it pays off or not. But Dylan Toynes being ready to the front. We saw him up there yesterday in the finale, and like we said, someone that's done well here before. Noah Hobbs readying himself as well in the blue sleeves with that gilet still on. Oh, second place rider on the stage yesterday. Just 1 kilometre to go now until that sprint.
Right, this is going to be interesting, isn't it? It's the Swissman Rito Hollenstein who is bringing up Stevie Williams by the looks of it to have a go at this, the big tall figure of the Israel Premier Tech rider in the middle. Uno X continued to go. Martin Urienstad, I think, moving up the inside, and we've only got about 500 metres to go, but I think they're going for this. It is going to be, I think, Urienstad, either him going for this or leading out Tobias Johannesson. Dark jersey on the outside, that doesn't look like Noah Hobbs, but I think it's one of the Groupama FDG riders as well, the under-23 team. Noah Hobbs being moved up, I think, on the outside, or at least he is moving up in that blue jersey. He's quite a long way back, though, on the left-hand side in about 15th place. A little snaky run into this as well. Wet roads as well, painted lines. They'll have to be a bit careful. Uno X continue. And the sole Uno X rider at the front's got a little bit of a gap as well. It is Martin Urienstad who's back there. A little bubble up here. Here we go. That's one of the coupe riders. Is that one of the coupe riders or one of the Groupama riders, I think? Ian, who looks like he's got it. Coupe, isn't it?
Like
Coupe
Repsol rider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looked like Noah Hobbs took second on the line, actually, so picking up some valuable seconds.
I'll just confirm for you who that is. I must admit, I'm not entirely up on all the Coupe Repsol riders. But that was quite a dominant win. You can see that Dylan Turns was there. We'll confirm that result for you as soon as we get it. Might even get a chance to see it back in slow-mo. I'm sure we will.
It was a really long, drawn-out sprint, and in the end, even no one had the legs, or no one 100% wanted to commit to it. Whether that was the first real big effort, like you're saying, cold legs. It's been a hard day so far, but looked like no one really had the jump, apart from that coupe rider who took it quite convincingly in the end.
Well, there isn't, on the general classification at the moment, there isn't a single coupe rider in the top. I'm just trying to make sure I'm not putting my foot in something here. I don't think there is any in the top 25 riders. So I've just got a feeling he may have taken that for the sheer joy of taking it. And of course, he'll get a bit of cash prize money for doing so as well. And some points in that blue jersey competition. But the tongue out afterwards might have indicated that he just fancied having a go at it. But let's see. Might be wrong there. There could be thinking behind this, but I'm a little bit frustrated. We haven't relayed to you who it was just yet, but we'll wait till we have it confirmed. Then I wouldn't mind seeing it back again. We've got one more bonification sprint point, and that comes, as Ian said, with 11k to go at Akafjord, just before we start to turn around the finishing lake on the edge of Hammerfest, where we're finishing. Very close to going across the bridge now. In fact, here it is. This is the Kvalsund Bridge we're about to turn onto, one of Norway's longest hanging bridges. Opened in 1977, the year I was born, the year that Elvis died. It was Norway's, not that the two events are linked that I'm aware of anyway. It was Norway's longest and the world's northernmost hanging bridge, as I said. 741 metres long. And it has 11 spans. Uno X picking it up. I think they sense a change in wind, or no, it's a push in the wind direction. Look at this, they're at it again. They're naughty boys, these Norwegians. Look at it. If they haven't done enough already today, it is causing problems, Ian, isn't it? They're causing problems for themselves by the look of it. There's splits. Wow.
Yeah, they obviously sense a bit of wind up there on the top of that bridge. It's like we saw in the Tour de France the other year. These bridges just cause that huge problem as the wind picks up, and no real kind of cover, obviously, from the wind, and it looks like it's splitting once again. The entire team on the front splitting this one to pieces.
Yeah, that's Fredrik Vernes, the Norwegian champion. Look what they've done. This could set up the finale of the race like this. Once they're across the bridge, as you can see, they've got 33k to go. It's not a long bridge, but they must have had a block cross wind through there, coming in off the sea as well. A tight left to continue there, making their way around the edge of the island here. They're onto the island now, but look at the gaps in there. Let's see. If they persist with that, it might crack open a bit more, because it's only 6 and 7 bike lengths every now and again, but there's a lot of those little gaps down there.
Certainly is. They're putting the entire peloton under pressure right now. Still quite a long way to go in this stage, though. 33 kilometres remaining, and unless there's well represented from other big teams like DSM, like Jayco Alula, this is going to have to be a team time trial all the way to the end of this one.
Well, if they keep this going, here's the sprint again as we look at it. There's the Coupe Repsol rider on the right-hand side, coming around Noah Hobbs. Noah Hobbs shakes his head a little bit dischuffed with, I think, possibly some of the movement around him. But that rider whose number we can't see, as we can't see pretty much any of the riders' numbers, getting that final sprint point. And I think that's why it might be taking so long for us to relay to you the result as well, because we're not the only ones that couldn't see all the riders' numbers. Team time trial, though, underway from Uno X. Wow, Ian, there was me talking about maybe them having wasted their energy a bit today, potentially, if it was to stay like that, but absolutely none of it. That is why they were staying at the front. I think not even necessarily for the sprint, but because they knew they had the bridge coming, and we are looking at a team time trial. The question is, who's with them? There's a human-powered health rider, there's one of the Trinity riders, and one DSM rider as well. That's it. That is it. And they're not going to, whatever happens at the moment, surely they're not going to help these guys just yet, are they? Because they don't need to. The Uno X team will press on. Are they all here? 1, 2, 3. Are they all there, Ian, do you think? 1, 2, 3. Looking for 6.
5, is it?
I think so, yeah. I think you might be right. There might only be 5.
I don't think I've really ever seen this within a stage race. Almost an entire team. Only
Amazing.
with 3 stragglers on the back, and I can't see this remaining all the way to the finish just because the firepower behind DSM, Jayco, Alula, all the other teams basically are going to come and want to shut this one down. No one's going to be happy with this situation. There is 5 from Uno X there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So 8 riders in total, riding clockwise, if you like, around the western edge of Kvaluja, the island we've ridden over that bridge to. And I just, do you know, sometimes I often think that, oh yeah, a bridge which is running, what do you call it, parallel to the sea, it's so obvious, surely no one's, it's just too obvious. No, that's exactly what they do, and it just smashes the race to pieces. Let's watch what's going on at the front here as well, though. Kern Farmer, 2 riders there going through. I think Roger Adria, no, it isn't him either. He has got teammates there. There's 2 of them at the front.
I think we should say credit to the race organisers. Putting that sprint point where they did just before the bridge, it meant that everyone was kind of out of sorts, out of position ever so slightly, and it was the one team that did manage to get themselves back into formation quickest, Uno X, who were ready for that bridge. Everyone else out of position, out of sorts, and like we see, the gap is being brought back down, but I bet the Trinity rider, that DSM rider and the Human Power Health rider looked round and couldn't believe their luck. They're being towed away to this one, but as I said before, I can't see this one staying away just because the firepower behind, and literally no other team in the race is going to be happy about this situation.
Yeah, possibly a little bit of local knowledge there then, in terms of the use of that bridge. I mean, it is seemingly so obvious, isn't it? A bridge in a position like that, so close to the finish, but it worked perfectly. A little bit longer, twice as long, that bridge, and the gaps would have been even bigger. 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Let's look at it visually. And there's still some gaps in there, isn't there? So these are the last 30 kilometres. This is basically 1/2 of a circular route around the island of Kvaluja. Just 700 metres off the, I guess, mainland, or there's so much water on it, and it's so broken up on this northwestern edge of Norway, up in Finnmark, that it is an enormous floating island, only just off the very edge of the mainland. And these boys aren't going to be, well, they're not going to be the toast of whatever hotel lots of these riders end up staying in this evening. If you sat next to them at dinner this evening and the Uno X team is off to your right and you're Israel Premier Tech, might be a few stern looks across them. Hey, thanks for that, lads. Yeah, that was a nice day out. Cheers, yeah. You did it to us twice. And, of course, it remains to see what the end game will play out as and who's going to come out on top in this one. They're certainly making everyone work harder, Ian, even if they get nothing out of this stage, as we see now Martin Urienstad on the front.
Definitely a wearing down process tactic being used by Uno X, but the other thing that's going to happen as a result of this is the other teams looking ahead at kind of Saturdays and Sunday stages, they're just going to look to Uno X to do everything. It's like, you've played your cards, you've shown how strong you are, we're not going to help you out in any situation at this point in the race. So they've got another couple of really hard days coming up, and they've set their stall out nice and early. So they're going to have to see this one through, I think, now, having put everyone on the back foot on today's stage. And yeah, like you said, probably upset a few people today, making it hard work for them. And so yeah, in the coming days, when Uno X look round and want someone else to help them out with some work, it's going to be slow coming, I think.
Well, let's not forget that their leader, Tobias Johannesson, the Norwegian youngster, he won that final bonification point yesterday uphill to the finish line, didn't he? And he looked really good doing so too. Tobias Johannesson came into the stage in 5th place today, 7 seconds down on Alberto Danese. I think if it's draggy enough over those final 2 kilometres, it could suit Tobias Johannesson really well. It just depends how much of this chasing he's been doing. We're just seeing one of the Uno X riders there shaking his hand out, I think trying to get a little bit more warmth into the hand by the looks of it. Yeah, that shows how cold it is, doesn't it, Ian? I mean, that's the sort of thing you and I would be doing in January in England. Here we are in August, way up north of the Arctic Circle, and riders hammering their hands in a downward direction to try and force blood down into them and warm the extremities up a little. Been a tough day today. Short stage, shortest stage of the race at 153k, but this will take a little bit of recovering from, because it just takes a lot more out of the body, doesn't it?
It will. Precious energy being used by the body to even stay warm in these conditions. It's a lot tougher for the body to work when you're cold, rather than, say, 20, 21 degrees, and the muscles are all nice and warm and working as they should be, and the body isn't trying to force blood back to your vital organs just to stay warm, and it's allowing the blood to flow nicely around to the extremities. And even when you're a little bit warmer, it goes to the extremities to try and cool you down. And yeah, we see that one rider flicking the hand down, like you said, to force the blood into the hand. As we see Stevie Williams, I mean, yeah, flicking his hands like that, you can't really complain if you haven't been wearing gloves all day.
Yeah, you want a little neoprene pair on, or a sort of semi-waterproof pair. I can't see many riders with full finger gloves on there. By the looks of it, though, Lewis Bauer has, though, in that white and red raglan jersey there, right in the middle. He's got a pair of long finger ones on. I reckon tonight, if you were to go around the team hotel or wherever they're staying, it might not be a hotel, of course, because this race is very point to point, so these riders could well be spread out amongst guest houses and all sorts of things. I don't know, actually, on this race, but it might be, my suspicion is they might be living a little bit more, what should we say, simply up in this part of the world. It might not be too luscious, but I think if you had a little van loaded with waterproof neoprene gloves, I reckon you could go around the hotels and do quite a good sale this evening. Because by the looks of it, there aren't many. I'm sure they'll have them with them surely in every pro, right, whatever race they're on, has a minimum of one wet bag in the team car that will have a pair of gloves and a rain jacket and stuff. But I would have them on today. The fact that we're seeing riders doing that tells us how cold the hands are, and it can play, and even over a distance like this, it can play havoc with your race, having stone cold hands, can't it?
It can. The only thing that perhaps has happened is they started the stage with their long finger neoprene gloves on, and they got saturated in one of those downpours earlier in the race, and then once they're wet through, and then the wind chill, sometimes it can feel a little bit warmer when you actually take the gloves off and get that kind of wet glove away from your hand. But once the wind starts blowing again, if the bare hands get wet again, the cold wind chill kicks in once again, as you see bottles being handed up. And we joked yesterday about perhaps warm tea being handed up in these bottles. I think definitely today, from as we see one of the Team Coupe riders missing a bottle from the Uno X Swanee, bottle being driven over by the various cars. Interestingly, little fact about the bottles: the bottle tops are meant to fly off when you ride over them, to try and help with riders not crashing when they hit those. So we saw the bottle top fly off when the car went over it, but that should happen when the riders go over it as well.
Yeah, it's one of the the difference is, isn't it, between the bottles that the vast majority of the pro teams use and then the bottles you might buy in your local bike shop, where they have a sort of very tight lockdown screw top to them. Most of these bottles have got a kind of a pop-off top, haven't they, that comes off really quickly. Or at least a spout that opens really quickly when pressure is applied. So that makes a lot of sense. You can see we're still experiencing constant undulations along the very edge of the island here, making its way. Now we're kind of northwestward. We're going to go snaking inland a little bit to make its way around the rocky headland on the western edge of Kvaluya, the island whose name I keep tripping over every time I say it. You just see two of the Astana riders, even at this stage in a race with 25k to go, desperately trying to get a rain jacket back on. That indicates how cold and exposed it is on this end. We've rolled through a little bit of protection from trees, but the vast majority of this part of Finnmark, the county where we are in the far, far north of Norway, is mostly above the tree line. So what trees there are tend to be in valleys and gorges and what have you. Most of it's really exposed. As I say, I'm pleased to say the weather forecast for the weekend is so much better. So we should be treated to more of the kind of views we had yesterday. We haven't had too many of the open mouth moments today, Ian, have we? Apart from with the racing, because it's been bleak and rock hard, as they say.
I was going to say, I was pretty open-mouthed in those crosswinds as the race was split into pieces and then over that bridge once again. But just things relaxing ever so slightly now that they picked up that tailwind and going around this headland. The next point that we're really going to be looking towards is 11.1 kilometres to go, and that's the Ackerford Sprint. Yeah,
they've got a tight left-hander just after it as well, and then the road starts to weave its way a little bit more. It gets a little bit more interesting on the run into Hammerfest, our Finnish town. This is the third time we've finished in Hammerfest. As I mentioned, the last time it did was back in 2018. This is only the second time in this race's now 10-year history, over the last 9 years, that it's gone quite in this direction to the far north of Norway. And it's where this race has really made its name. It's in the far north of Norway, where the Arctic Race of Norway is best recognised, in these big, open, bleak and epic landscapes, which provide, as we saw with the Fish Eagle we were looking at earlier, so little opportunity to get any sense of scale. Of course, when we see the riders and the peloton, we get a sense of scale from them, but the minute we pan away from them, there's so little on the landscape to provide an obvious comparison of how big or how small things are. As far as I'm aware from our mapping, we're avoiding that tunnel that goes right the way through there, but that's an interesting point that I hadn't seen coming on our map. Yeah, the race convoy and outriders ahead of them, turning beyond that, but that's an impressive structure right the way through the middle. As I mentioned when we first came on air, the King of the Mountains competition today, or points for the King of the Mountains, all decided with Vincent van Hemelen, the Belgian rider for Team Flanders Valois, going in the breakaway in that King of the Mountains jersey, the peacock jersey, and sewing up all the points. He won at the top of the Reipas summit, the Sarves summit, and the Stokkedalen summit as well. All three of them. The middle one, the Sarves, was an all-category climb, the highest category in the Arctic Race of Norway. So 12 points today, and that actually, on a day like this, that's going to put him right up there with a very, very healthy lead going into the next 2 days, and that will be a classification he will try to dominate, as did Stephen Bassett, the American rider for Human Powered Health, last year in that peacock jersey competition. I don't actually know, whether peacocks are a native bird to this part of Norway. I'm just presuming they are, but I certainly don't recall seeing any. We have peacocks near me, Ian. You ever see any peacocks your way?
Plenty of peacocks in Kent.
There you go.
Yeah. Can be quite vicious.
Yes, big bird as well, isn't it? Once they're, yeah, you don't want to get too near them, and they're quite protective of their vicinity. Yeah. Having said that, I don't know whether the peacocks we get here in England are actually native. Do you know what I mean? Or whether they've been introduced as pets and what have you, and you don't mess with them, do you? I can't imagine there'd be many other creatures that would mess with them either. It's a big bird. Anyway, it's not the first time today that I've described a creature as a big bird. I'm disgracing myself in my ornithological patheticness. Martin Urienstad is now the leading Uno X rider on that left-hand edge, and it's almost like they're just kind of hanging on to the front because that's what they've done all day. I've just got this strange feeling that they're not going to get too much out of this. I've not been willing that on them, because I think the ride they've done, they've taken this race, their home race, by the scruff today, and have led at the front all the way through. From the minute we saw that breakaway of 6 riders clear, it was them leading, it was then them chasing, it was them catching, it was them forging both of the big splits we've seen in the crosswinds. And yet now, with 22k to go in this little stalemate, they're still there, hanging on to the front and just marshalling it. They've come off the coast road, and it appears that they've met the other end of that same tunnel as well, which would have been the shortcut. I don't think any of the riders took it. It'd be nice to see them trying. Let's not forget, this is not just 22k to the finish. This is now 11 kilometres as we watch Guillaume Martin there in the middle for Cofidis with his glasses off, blowing his cheeks out. I think that blowing the cheeks out is actually just as much about trying to get warm as it is him moving up there, the Cofidis man.
Yeah,
so
once the pressure's gone
out
of this one, once the pressure's gone out of this one, the riders back in the bunch, not putting out too much power, all feeling the cold, blowing their cheeks out, slapping their thighs, swinging arms, all sorts going on to try and stay warm. It's a little bit too late in the day now to be going back and putting on layers from the team car. So, yeah, what you're wearing right now is kind of what you're stuck with. Probably would have taken some layers off after the race kicked off in those crosswinds, and you're working hard, wanted to feel a little bit more racy coming towards the end of this one. But just ever since that bridge, things have calmed down a lot, and riders just begin to feel it. And the next time they really press on is going to be for that sprint point in 10 kilometres time, but also at the finish. And it might be one of those situations where you've been feeling great all day, you made the front split in those crosswinds and felt good doing your turns, etc. And then come the finale and muscles have got cold, the body's just begun to shut down ever so slightly, and you might find that on that drag up to the finish that there's a few bodies here and there that just aren't working as well as they were earlier in the stage, and we could find some splits, I think.
Yeah, we're seeing increasingly more and more of the riders, including the Uno X riders themselves, squeezing hands, shaking them out, trying to squeeze any moisture out of the gloves that they're wearing, but just get the hands warm again. There is nothing worse. I'm sure you've probably been in this situation, Ian, there it is confirmed for you, by the way. The rider who took that, Dreg, taking the 3 points at that sprint there as well. He was the Coupe rider, André Dreg, the Norwegian 24-year-old for Team Coupe.
So I think he was the best placed rider from that team yesterday. I think it's 21st on the stage and 25th overall after yesterday's stage. So yeah, just wanted to move up a little bit, and he looked super strong in that sprint actually. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do anything, go better than yesterday, better than that 21st on the stage yesterday.
Right, yeah, so well spotted. He was their first finisher yesterday. They've had a rider, well, the same rider both days in the breakaway though, in Johan Ravnoy, the teenager, 19-year-old Coupe rider. He's looked really strong as well. Simon Geschke moving up on the outside there, along with those other Cofidis riders as well. Guillaume Martin in the middle there, just getting a drink down. So Cofidis, as we saw them do towards the finish yesterday, getting a bit more involved in the red on the right-hand side as we look at them. It isn't a massive group, is it, Ian? Was I saying 80 for this group? Because I think I'm wrong. I reckon that's less. I think it's slightly less, or maybe it's just the vastness of the landscape making them look a bit smaller, but it could be less than 80 there.
It'd be interesting to see the results at the end of the day, how many people did lose out in those crosswinds, who ended up in that very final group on the road, and how much time they're going to lose over the course, because that's split with 80, 90 kilometres to go at this stage at one point, 70 kilometres to go. It was definitely fully split. So over the course of those 70 kilometres, how much time that very back group has lost to the front group will be interesting.
Well, the fact that Noah Hobbs took the 2 seconds and 2 points in there indicates he's well up for, well, potentially the general classification, and certainly that blue jersey that he's looking after for Alberto Dainese. So he gets some points back on Dainese there as well. I guess it's that old question, Ian, of with Alberto Dainese having done what he did yesterday, getting the win, putting his finger to his lips as well to whoever that was to, and I don't know exactly the context of that, but he'd got something off his back, whatever, by winning that stage yesterday. It can go two ways, can't it? Either he's now freed up and buoyed up with confidence, or it's taken the pressure off him, and he might not have quite as much impetus today. It's the great unknown, isn't it? Maybe that's the fire that's now lit under Noah Hobbs to say, look, I was so close yesterday, I'm going to really make this count today. I don't know what you think, what your
No, I agree. I think first point would be, as Noah Hobbs was at 4 seconds on the GC, so he'll be down to 2 seconds behind Dainese, but obviously more bonus seconds on the finish line, as we saw yesterday. That was the key moment, the actual finish line. But you say Dainese putting his finger to his lips, whether that was regarding the Tour de France issues, DSM chose Welsford over him in terms of their sprinter who they took to the Tour de France. Obviously, Welsford didn't come up with the goods at the Tour de France this year, and whether he thought he should have gone, he could have performed as their sprinter at the Tour, and ultimately he's leaving the team at the end of this one. He's going to Tudor in the next few seasons. So whether it was surrounding that, I do not know.
Well, Ian, you make a very good point there. I'm not, as you're saying, just to clarify, that's not you saying that is the case, but just raising it as a potential possibility. That sounds interesting. It's a real. I certainly had a palpable disappointment in I'm feeling sorry for him really. Actually, Sam Welsford in the Tour de France this year, because he'd had such a good start to the season. Watching him in the spring and the early summer, he looked really like he was kind of going beyond that guy who's come from the track, that fast guy who's come from the track, to being a bona fide, recognised big hitter in the sprints as well. So I'm sure he'll continue to grow and develop as well, and it will have all just the experience of being through that Tour de France as well would have added, I suspect, to the rider that he will go on to become. I'm absolutely certain. But yeah, that sounds interesting. Well, there are DSM in the middle. Romain Combo again, the first of those. And here we are at the back, watching Camille Bonneau of Team Flanders Baloise trying to get any old warmth into his hands, legs. He's got full finger gloves on, so he might well have been back to the car and got some fresh gloves on by the looks of it. I think Lidl Trek go down as the best wrapped team, actually, in this race. They seem to have been really well wrapped up throughout, the Lidl Trek riders. And there is Alberto Dainese, I think, with a rain jacket on. That's why we're not seeing the Midnight Sun jersey, because that's Dainese in the middle. I have to say, that's not brilliant. And you would normally expect the race leader to have, would you not, a Midnight Sun jersey rain jacket, but maybe they just don't have any. I don't know. But he's wearing a plain DSM black and blue top.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought they'd supply kind of what looked like one of the heaviest rain jackets that you can really put on. They're proper waterproof rather than showerproof, so probably hasn't been supplied with one of them. Would have been probably supplied with kind of a gilet, a windproof, showerproof gilet, that kind of thing. But he's decided today to keep completely wrapped up, although he has discarded with his gloves at this point. I'm sure he'll want to get rid of that outer layer come the finale of this one. But talking about DSM, talking about their sprinter makeups, one thing that poor Sam Welsford's got to deal with next year is Fabio Jakobsen going there as their top sprinter next season. So I'd have thought Welsford probably won't get another hit out at the Tour de France next year, so perhaps we'll have to go to the Giro or the Vuelta to try and pick up his Grand Tour stage wins. But like you say, he looked really impressive at the start of the year, but yeah, didn't quite pay off at the Tour de France. Obviously that's the biggest bike race in the world and the fastest sprinters there, so it's always a tough call. But yeah, perhaps looking ahead to next year, that was his chance to pick up a stage win perhaps.
Yeah, I'm sure it will happen with time, knowing his qualities. Uno X down to three or four riders, the same riders really at the front, but things flattening out and calming down. It's almost as if, normally with 16k to go, particularly on a finish like this, where we're onto the island where we're actually finishing, we're making our way towards a sprint, it would be a bit more chaotic, but we've had the chaos on this stage, haven't we? It really kicked off in the midsection of this race. Shortest stage of 4. If you weren't with us for it, we went through a section before we came into the tree line, which was really open and exposed. Uno X, the Danish and Norwegian team, making the most of their local knowledge, absolutely smashed it to pieces. Split the race into, at one point, about 4 groups, and little drips going off at the back and in between them as well. Then brought it back together, and then it came back together again. Then we crossed the bridge to this island, and they did the same thing again. It has regrouped one more time, and we now have a situation where we've got somewhere, we reckon, between 70 and 80 riders, something like that. We'll find out come the finish, who are going towards the final bonification sprint point of the day, which is in about 6k's time now, 5k's time now, and then the run in to the finish itself as well, and the snaking road which makes its way clockwise around the final lake just inland from Hammerfest. It's been a Hammerfest at multiple occasions during this race today, and you can see it in the face of the riders. Cold, tired, soaked through, but this is a big stage race now, the biggest Norwegian stage race there is, and an opportunity to get a win in a Point Pro stage race in this really, really busy week. It's a really busy week for us here as commentators at Eurosport GCN at the home of cycling. We're all hands to the pump to bring you 4 1 week, there or thereabouts, 4 to 6 day stage races, all in one go. The Vuelta a Burgos started earlier this week, the 6-stage race. Rob Hatch and Matt Stevens bringing you that. The Tour of Denmark, also 6 days long, runs right the way through to Sunday. Jose Bean and Smithy bringing you that one. Brian Smith, I should say. Tour de Limousin in France, also 6 days long, and it's Hannah Walker and Pippa York bringing you that one. And then, of course, Ian and I bringing you the Arctic Race of Norway here. Slightly shorter at 4 days, but as you can see, short but beautifully formed. I'm just looking down at those 2 houses there, Ian, imagining living on this beautiful but quite bleak island on a day like this as well. Waking up, imagine living in that house just in the foreground there, and then opening your curtains in the morning and looking out to that view. It's incredible, isn't it?
I was just thinking kind of how that view must change through the 12 months of the year. I'm sure that would be an awesome kind of time-lapse set of photos that you'd show from your living room window across that lake there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fishing on this island in particular, big industry, and most of the world's best salmon coming from the far north of Norway.
That wind still blowing hard, and now, what's that? 2 and a bit kilometres until our sprint point. That's coming up with 11.1 kilometres to go. Fiercely contested at the last point, that was 35k to go, and we saw just after that the race split once again, passing over that bridge with the crosswinds, and that wind still blowing hard, but right now the race not on, but I'm sure it's going to pick up towards this sprint point, and perhaps over the top of this sprint point could potentially allow for more splits to happen, someone maybe to go over the top of it, so gonna have to stay attentive at the front of this one. But one rider not paying attention is Roger Adria, who was right at the back there in the previous shot, so someone that I would have thought would be going for the GC from the Equipo Kerner Farmer team.
Maybe he's keeping his powder as dry as he possibly can for the actual finish, because this is the build up to that sprint point now in 2K's time. They've got to get to the edge of this little headland they're making their way out on right now, on this circular road that goes around the edge of the island. They turn right and then head sort of due northward to meet this sprint point, which is it's actually on top of a little jutting peninsula that sticks out onto the field here. Little Trek in the middle. Jaku Alula in the white-topped blue kit just next to them. Uno X off to the left-hand side, who will want to get something out of this stage after everything they've put into it. Cofidis and Guillaume Martin sitting second wheel for them with no shades on, right in the front of our shot right now as they make their way along that sweeping right-hander, as I said, that takes them a bit more northerly, right the way on the edge of the jutting out peninsula that they're riding their way around now. I can only imagine how good the mountain bike race is that's held here every year that I was reading about earlier when we went through the guidebook here, and it must be incredible riding. Rocky, dare I say, a little bit slippy. I think it described it as a mud fest as well, so right up your street.
Yeah, probably enjoy that one, but only 1k to go now, about 900 metres, and everyone looking a little bit nervous. Who's going to show their hand first? Who's going to flinch first and lead this one out? Looks like Astana, Team Coop coming up. They took the bonus seconds at the last sprint point, so watch out for them once again as DSM move up on the right-hand side of the road.
Yeah, will it be Andre Dredge again, their Norwegian rider for the Danish Coop team? Let's see. DSM have the first two places. Uno X right out of it at the moment, so I don't know whether they are thinking about getting these points. If they are, they need to get a shake on. Astana, as you say, right in the middle. Is it Marco Tizza they're thinking about? He was up there in that top 15 yesterday, Tizza. I think he might be the rider sitting second wheel right now. DSM starting the long-drawn lead out. Who is that Uno X rider there? It doesn't look like Johannesson, actually. I don't think it is. Always handy when you can see race numbers, isn't it? Of which we can see none. Hello, here comes the Raglan jersey. Best young rider for Group Armour FDG. Lewis Bauer coming up. And just like that, Noah Hobbs, my pick for the day, just says, thanks very much, I'll be having that. The British teenager in the blue jersey. So two of our jerseys, first and second there. Lewis Bauer here, who was stuck back in that second group for a while when that big first split happened. Noah Hobbs wants that blue jersey. I'm trying to work out. He certainly doesn't. Oh, how many points was he on? He was on 12. He's clawed back 6. So he is the leader of that blue jersey now at this stage, depending on what happens at the finish, because Dainese was the leader. He's not scored any points today, but Noah Hobbs now has 2. And look at that, Ian. That's actually quite easy for Hobbs. Look at that, the turn of a few turns of the pedals from a sprinter who is that bit faster than the other riders up again. It was a pretty desperate sprint from some of the others there, and yet Hobbs just put in a few strokes in that bigger gear off to their right-hand side and had that one clearly.
Yeah, it showed his speed there, won convincingly with his teammate Bauer in second. So, yeah, all looks good for Hobbs right now in terms of that blue jersey competition, but there are big points on the line.
Ian, just before we lose it in our shot, what we're looking at there is Haja. I think it's pronounced Hoja, recognised as the world's largest loose block of stone. So effectively a floating loose block of stone out to sea, the largest in the world as well. I must apologise. I said that Noah Hobbs has now won 2 of those bonification points. He hasn't. He was second at the last one, so that's 5 points. That should still see him in the lead at the moment of the points classification for that blue jersey. But of course, there are big points available. 15 points for the winner of this stage. But then Noah Hobbs was my pick for the day. So let's see if he goes on to get it. Sits second wheel right now, and his team, Groupama FDG, as I wondered whether they might, just getting a little bit more involved now as well. 3 teammates there. Let's not forget, of course, that first and second in that sprint are Groupama FDG riders anyway, although Lewis Bauer is wearing that Best Young Riders jersey. This is what I wondered, Ian, that might happen today, that Groupama FDG might put a little bit more behind Noah Hobbs, seeing actually how close he was yesterday. Despite the fact that Dainese looked so good in that final sprint, he wasn't exactly a majorly distant second place either. But still...
No, he didn't have any help yesterday, and nearly pulled off the win. As we see there, vote for the best teammate of the day on the Arctic Race of Norway Twitter account or Facebook. Who would you vote for?
Best rider of the day today. Gosh, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because it's been a day that's been dominated by, well, an early breakaway, and then those Uno X riders. Goodness me, I don't know. I might say, from my perspective, put it out there for Vincent van Hemelen, because this is a race of 2 halves, really. And 3 thirds. In that first third, he got in the breakaway and he won all 3 of the mountains points. So I'm going to say Vincent van Hemelen, our peacock man. What about you?
I would have to go back and watch the footage, but probably the Uno X rider that went across the bridge, who led that one out, who literally split the race to pieces and took 4 of his teammates with him, meaning 5 riders out of the 6 at the front of a breakaway of 8. So that was a super impressive move, as we see that helicopter shot of that harbour area where all those fishing boats will come in and out of.
Yeah, this is Finuya. Finuya is one of the little towns right on the edge of where we're going to, in Hammerfest, where we finish. Finuya is the first fishing village before you come into Hammerfest. It's in the little bay just before it. So many interlocking rocks and islands here, of course. And this is where, as I said earlier in the day, it gets more twisty. We've had a lot of straight roads so far in this race, and this is going to be testy. This is where I can't help but think that snowplow grating, the kind of granular lines on the road here that we still see coming towards us, I'd have thought there'd be a help, Ian. I think we had this conversation yesterday. It wasn't as wet yesterday, but now it's wet. Those little grooves, do you think there'd be a help or a hindrance? It's hard to tell, isn't it?
As long as you've got your tyre pressures right, I think it could kind of cause a bit of a gripping effect from the road. But if you've got your tyres too hard and your tyres start kind of chattering across them, then I think that could feel rather uncomfortable. Because the other thing you've got to take into account is we do see the scoring of the road from the snowplow on certain sections, but then also the other tarmac's very, very smooth, so probably different levels of grip as you go across the same section of tarmac, which is always a tricky situation, because you think this is fine, then all of a sudden your wheels are gone from underneath you, which is the worst case scenario. But right now 7.3 kilometers to go, and just looking ahead, looking at that final kilometre, I've got it down as sweeping left all the way to the line, around 400 metres of a sweeping left, and only the last kind of 50 to 80 metres is actually a straight line. It will be a cross headwind to finish. So, once again, a little bit like yesterday, I think you want to leave it late, but perhaps come off the wheel round to the right of the rider ahead of you, as we saw yesterday with Dainese coming down the right hand side of the road, taking shelter from all the riders ahead of him from that slight crosswind, because that wind is still blowing as teams now make their way to the front, and we see that kind of colour blocking that we say at the head of the peloton. Uno X at the left hand side of the road, Groupama FDJ development team in there as well. Little Trek just readying themselves. DSM in there as well. And Jaco Alula on the left-hand side of the road as we look at it now. Team Coop lining up behind them. A few Astana jerseys in there as well. Very interesting to see who's going to take this one by the scruff of the neck and lead out into our final uphill drag to the line. And then that final kilometre as I just described.
So Jaco Alula all in for Blake Quick again by the looks of it. Some of the sprinters who missed out yesterday getting a second bite of the cherry here today, if it should come down to that, because it's still a little bit of an unknown. The last time this race finished here, it was Adam Taupolik, the Czech rider, riding for Corendon Circus back in 2018 in the team where Mathieu van der Poel came in second to him. That's from a leading group of around about 35 riders. This is a much bigger group. And I'm not sure on this occasion whether the finish is exactly the same as it was for that stage. This gradual drag, it's dragging here as you can see, but the final drag is over the final 2 kilometres, and as Ian has said, the final K is slightly sloping around a left-hander as well. It will be interesting to see whether it does come down to a pure sprint. Milan Fretin was being brought up by Vincent van Hemelen there for Team Flanders Baloise. There he is at the front. You see the yellow gilet there at the front. That's our King of the Mountains leader, and he has in a black rain jacket just behind him with the on the left-hand side of his shot, just in front of those Jaco Alula riders in the black rain jacket, just moving up. I think that's Milan Fretin by the looks of it. He finished outside the top 10 yesterday. He wasn't really in contention for that sprint. Might fancy a second bite of the cherry today. He's definitely, along with Alberto Danesi, one of that clutch of, say, 4 or 5 of the best sprinters that are here. And then mixing up with that, if we look at yesterday's result, which did come down to a sprint finish, we consider that we had Alberto Danesi and Noah Hobbs sprinting out for the win. But then we had Clément Champuissin, Kevin Ladenois, August Jensen, Martin Nurienstad, those kind of riders up there in the top 10 that we wouldn't necessarily expect to be involved with a sprint finish in that quality of rider around them either. So I've got a feeling, Ian, we might have a similar kind of finish here where we get a really interesting mix of different kinds of riders in this gentle but draggy uphill finish.
Yeah, I agree. I think yesterday we saw some of the pure sprinters like your Blake Quick just struggling ever so slightly to hold his position up that final drag to the finish line, and then was unable to make his way through what was quite a crowded finish. Darnese said that he felt like he was quite lucky that it did open up for him and he was actually able to unleash his sprint, because you get those puncheur sort of riders on the climbs coming to the fore, just getting into a good position, but then haven't quite got the kick of a Danese or a Blake Quick, and so kind of end up almost getting in the way of the sprinters. But today might be slightly tougher. We saw Guillaume Martin being brought to the front. Whether he sees that final climb up to the finish as a potential launch pad or not. So interesting. Keep your eyes peeled for any late attackers as we're rapidly approaching that final drag up now. Just 4.2 kilometres to go, and before you know it, we'll be on that final drag.
Yeah, keep it together, boys. Keep it safe. We've had a nice smooth passage of a stage so far today. We had a couple of late crashes yesterday, so fingers crossed we have none of that. It just gets a little bit more urban here into the edge of Hammerfest. And yeah, the road continues to snake a little bit. Once we've gone through Hammerfest itself, we then turn into slightly quieter roads around the edge of the bay and the inlet before we turn in to go around the edge of the lake where it finishes too as well. So these are slightly more nervous moments, as you can see. Watching Jaco Alula there talking about Zdeněk Stybar and his return to racing after his operation, Ian, almost any one of these finishes, Zdeněk Stybar in his pomp, in a field like this as well, would have been an absolutely nailed-on finish. Particularly in these conditions, a nailed-on winner, I should say, for a finish like this, where it's, you know, slightly technical, damp, wet, tough conditions, cold day out. It's right up his street, isn't it? So maybe there's an opportunity for him. This looks like Amund Grøndal Jansen. I think it is the rider. It is, yeah. The Norwegian just finding his way off the. Yeah, I don't know whether he's just pressed on a little bit there. Maybe that's a good sign for him in his return to racing.
He just carried a little bit more speed through that corner up that little rise and formed a little bit of a gap behind him. So we see some riders dropping off now from what has been a really tough day. But you said it about Stibar. He actually looked like he had the legs yesterday. He looked super strong at that final drag, but was obviously in the services of Blake Quick. Obviously his first race back since Amstel Gold, and yeah, probably didn't have the confidence in the team meeting to put his hand up and say, let's go for me, guys. But looked like he had the legs. But Jaco Alula all out of sorts right now as they come down super fast down into that final 2 or so kilometres up to the finish, and yeah, they just need to gather themselves, get themselves back into team position if they're going to stand any chance of leading out Blake Quick to the win today.
Those are the words of Ian Field. I'm Jez Cox, and these are the final 2.5 kilometres of the second stage of the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway, making its way up to the most northerly point of mainland Europe. And today we're out on the island of Kavulia and the finish in Hammerfest. We are just now making our way around the little inland lake, which is just south of Hammerfest itself. We turn back towards that finish, and then the slightly rising climb, which is actually going to be starting any minute now, because we're right down alongside the lake now, so it'll start to rise up a little bit. Little trek. Can they get Mark Ristenga into position for this finish? He was good yesterday in 4th place, so we know the Spaniard's sprinting well. A little bit of a squeeze here as well as some of the riders drop off. This is slightly messy, Ian, isn't it? We saw a bit of a rough run in yesterday. Uno X spread all over. After all the work they've done today, they want to try and make something of this. Groupama FDG. Yeah, they are well behind Noah Hobbs, who sits second wheel. Looks comfortable climbing as well, Hobbs, in the blue jersey. They are, no doubt about it, buoyed by how strong he was yesterday. And he sits second wheel, but that is way too far up. He has Alberto Dainese right on his wheel. Don't expect to see the yellow jersey, you won't see it. He's got a black rain jacket on, but Dainese, yesterday's winner, sits third wheel right now, and he is marking Hobbs all the time. Big protagonists right up at the front already, Ian.
But those two riders are far too near the front with 1.3 kilometres to go. The Groupama FDJ rider did a sterling job. Oh, we see a flick there. Guillaume Martin nearly goes down, but yeah, just hit the front way too early to be able to take Noah Hobbs all the way to the finish line. And now Jaco Alula come back to the front with Zdeněk Štibar.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one attacked there, you know, in amongst that swirling of moving. I mean, they're moving pretty quickly, but I did think there was somebody would have gone for that as well. Our King of the Mountains, Van Hemelen, moving up on the right-hand side there in that yellow gilet. He is obviously in really good form as well.
Blake Quick has just lost the wheel of his teammates there, and he just had to move up on the path, but he's basically having to do his big effort now, and this is exactly what happened yesterday. Just lose his position and then he's too far back, but he is now on the wheel of Hobbs, about 15 riders back as his teammate drives it hard on the front. Hemmelin up there, I'm sure, working for his teammate as well.
Ian, I think this is, if it carries on like this is selective enough final rise. We talked about how hard we might want it to be. They're out the saddle having to work hard at this one as well. I think it might be, maybe it isn't a day for the big sprinters as well. Just looking to see where Dainese is. He's dropped back. Milan Fretin coming up, though, in the yellow shorts there of Team Flanders. And he's got his, there you go, Fretin's doing this for good reason, because Van Hemelen is on the front. And Van Hemelen is doing a lead out now for Fretin, who sits just on the back of those two DSM riders there, and the Uno X rider as well. I think that is Tobias Johansson. Johannesson is well placed in there. He's got one or two teammates moving up. Frederick de Vernes is the Norwegian national champion there. We're inside what must be the last 600 metres now as well as we come to the line. Van Hemelen is already starting the lead up. And Astana, Kazakhstan moving up too. Wow, this is going to be a really tight finish with a lot of riders in play at the end of this long but gradual drag as well. Which of the sprinters are left? That's the big question. Is that Dainese coming up the outside for DSM? It does look like it is. I think he's got himself back in position as well. It's Astana, Kazakhstan who are leading out though, and he's got a big lead. Two of the Astana riders right at the front as well by the looks of it. I'm just looking to see who this might be. He's taken the win too. Wow, Astana, Kazakhstan get the 1-2 on the line. Did not see that coming. Now, I don't think that was Garofoli either, but it might have been from the front shot, Ian. Wow.
I mean,
now, there is a surprise.
If anyone had an Astana 1-2 down on their predictions sheet, then fair play, because I certainly didn't, especially even after yesterday's stage. But unbelievable performance from those two riders.
Wow, they're delighted with that as well, aren't they? Gazzoli, Michele Gazzoli, the 24-year-old Italian. Perfect timing. It was a kind of a messy run-in as well. It was almost like there's a bit of hesitation going on there, despite the fact that the sprint was so hard. That was a hard and selective enough finale, wasn't it? Definitely.
It is. Gazzoli is the man in form. He's moved up from their development team. He moved up only on the 12th of August this year. But he was fourth at the men's under-23 road race in 2021. But hadn't shown this kind of form this year. But he's obviously got the pedigree and, had a real turn of speed after a really tough final couple of kilometres, as we predicted.
Wow, a 24-year-old. That is his first professional victory at this level. No wonder he's delighted with it, and what a race to do it in as well. Crikey, I want to see that finale again. Here we go, Ian. Tell me, mate, what on earth's going on here? Because there was all sorts happening, wasn't there?
Hemelin tried to lead out Frettin, I think it was, and then on the right-hand side, Astana with their two riders coming up. There was a little coming together, I think. Frettin went for a little... No, as the Astana rider clipped the guy in red, but managed to get onto the wheel of his teammate and come round him. It did curve all the way to the left until around about 50, 60 metres to go. But yeah, Darnese used his sprint to try and move up as best as he could, but just ran out of legs. And in the end, it was rather easy for Gazzoli.
Yeah, absolutely. What a fantastic victory for the 24-year-old. As you said, Ian, has only just recently stepped up from their development team. In fact, he's listed as being in their development team this year still. Really gritting the teeth and getting the 1-2 in the end, Astana, Kazakhstan. I talked about this being the potential day where we might see, it just takes a nonchalant couple of hand slaps there. I wonder whether it might be a day where we see Uno X get not too much out of it. Dare I say it, these guys have sat in behind Uno X all that time, marking the wheels, moving up. Let's see what the ramifications are for the general classification too, of course, after this. We get a chance to look down on Hammerfest itself, having only recently arrived here, of course. And that spectacular looking sort of toast rack triangular church. There is the top 10 for you. It was Scaroni who was second, Gazzoli the winner, the two Astana Italians revelling in these freezing cold conditions. Martinez of Cofidis in second, Gruel, the Frenchman of the Equipe Continental Groupama FDJ. That is a weird old top 10. I wish we'd hold that on screen a little bit longer, but I just... Could it be, Ian, that actually the conditions they've been through today have served up this this slightly peculiar finale that neither one of us would ever have predicted? Not just the fact that we've got two Italians first and second, but also that they're two Astana riders as well, who we hadn't seen too much of during the stage. But also, it was a strange, messy finale as well, with lots of different riders and teams in play. In the end, after all that work done by Uno X, no one team drilling it down. And actually looking at that final climb, I can't help but think that if Uno X had sat back and things had come back together and they saved a little bit more energy, I could have seen them drilling it up that final 2K and really whittling it down to the point where they've got Johannesson or someone like that ready to fire. But it just didn't happen, did it?
No, I think that potentially they could have used their energy better splitting it on that final climb, because although that said, it had been hard because Uno X rode the stage the way they did and the conditions led to that. They ended up with Johannesson taking out 8th place, Frettin 5th, Kevin Van Marker in the end in 6th, and Elias Maurice from Team Flanders Baloise was actually up there as well. I think he was the man who was trying to lead out Milan Frettin. He managed to hold on for 7th place. But as you say, a real mix of rider in that top 8. And yeah, I think it was a lot harder, the entire stage, than perhaps what it looked on paper. And perhaps that's what led to such a tough finish. And the sprinters just didn't quite have the legs in the end.
No, and it's another day, as we watch that sprint finish again, it's another day when... by the way, that's worth pointing out, our winner here, Michele Gazzoli, winning a sprint on the hoods. Look at that. winning a sprint on the hoods, showing that it was an uphill finish. He'd been on the hoods up there, and maybe I don't know whether he was at all surprised about that, but there we go, a sprint from the hoods.
Well,
And let's hear what he has to say too. He's with Seb Piquet.
Victory on this Arctic Race of Norway. We were expecting riders like Champoussin, like Turns, maybe not you. Is it a surprise for you?
Yeah, for you it's a surprise, but for me it's 1 year. I work hard for this goal, and I'm hungry. I'm totally excited for a comeback after 1 year. I work hard for this, and I'm back.
Can you explain the finish, the way you won this stage?
Yeah, the last 3K is so hard because a lot of turn, and is a small climb for the finish. Last 2K 4%. I can take this short climb in the first position, like 10 position. I'm back on the off DSM, and I think I thought, yeah, the leg is good, my mind is good. This is the day when I open the gas in the finish. I think I win.
But what a day! What a difficult day with the echelons, with the rain. It makes your victory even better.
Yeah, it's even better. My first pro victory, and today is a really cycling day. You know, cold, wind, hard, fast, wind, and yeah, it's the dream, the dream win.
Well, congratulations and thank you very much. Thanks, Michele.
Ian, Michele Gazzoli has just reminded me there. I was looking back at his Palmares, and I thought, he's 24 years of age. That's quite old to be in their development team. I think he is one of the riders who he was. In 2022, he was riding for their world team. I think he was one of the riders who was moved down to the development team in order to make space to bring in Cees Bol and Mark Cavendish. Because he said there, didn't he, I'm just pleased to be back in the team and back at it again after having a year, he didn't say out, but a year outside it. So back in the team by the looks of it as well. So that is interesting.
I think you were right. And taking that chance, as we see there, the stage result.
Yep, and we see, as you mentioned, so Milan Fretin is in fifth. It was Elias Maris who'd been working to get him into good position. Fretin moving up a little bit. Thibaut Grul is the young Frenchman, yet another of those Equipe Continental Groupama FDG riders who makes his way up there. Jonathan Lastra is the Cofidis Spaniard who was in third. Let's look for where he is in the shot. On the left-hand side of the shot there, the Cofidis man in the red top. Best of the rest behind the two Astana Italians who thrived on the rocky outcrop on just the outskirts of Hammerfest. It was a Hammerfest today as well throughout. And as he said, this rider, Gazzoli, I think that face might indicate a little bit not only how delighted he was with things, but also how it was something in that interview, wasn't there? That's what immediately reminded me of where he'd come from before he was moved down to the development team. I think that's a sprint of vindication there, showing that he deserves his place back in the world team, having spent a year in that development team. I remember at the time thinking, gosh, that must be tough, being in the world team, and understandably being moved out of it as we see the general classification showing that Noah Hobbs has moved into the lead by 1 second from Alberto Dainese, according to that, and Gazzoli slotting into third. So where was Dainese in that sprint? We saw him up there, didn't we? And he's disappeared from it as well. I don't know where he finished, not in the top 13 anyway, Dainese. And the young British rider, Noah Hobbs, according to what we're seeing provisionally, is going to take over that Midnight Sun jersey by just 1 second.
Yeah, that all came about because he had moved in within 2 seconds at the penultimate sprint point, and then he took out the win, didn't he, at the final sprint point, which gave him 3 bonus seconds, which put him into the GC by 1 second. I just kind of assumed that Dainese or him would pick up more bonus seconds at the finish line, but neither of them did, and so the GC remains that way. So Noah Hobbs in the yellow jersey by 1 second.
This is the stage race of stage races for uphill finishers. It was similar last year, and this year I think they've basically gone, well, those uphill finishes last year were brilliant. Let's just have all uphill finishes, and that is what we've got this week. We had 1.3k uphill yesterday. Today, this climb, although it's very gradual, it's come after a really tough, freezing cold day. It was 2k, very neatly, just gradually uphill to the finish here above Hammerfest. And it did its trick as well. It sort of weakened the best of the sprinters and gave an opportunity to strong finishers. And 2 Italians sat on top. If you'd said to me today, watching this as well, I know I'm using terrible archetypal assumptions about racing cyclists, but to have 2 Italians on the top step after a day like this, and particularly Astana as well, I just wouldn't have expected it from them today, but I think we're seeing a race here by a young rider who was really motivated and pleased to be back at it in that team as well. Whether, has to be said, by the way, Ian, whether Christian Scaroni knew that Gazzoli was coming, I'm not sure he could have done from that position, because he looked like he was going for the win anyway by himself until his teammate came past him.
It looked like earlier in the climb that he was trying to lead him out, but then they kind of lost each other a little bit with around 300 metres to go. But what did happen is, from being a little bit further back, the wind was from the left-hand side, so they got kind of the draft and protected from the wind all the way around that long left-hander. And as yesterday, Darnese came off that right-hand side of the road, as we see the GC now with Hobbs taking it from Darnese. Gazzoli moves up into third, and Bauer, yesterday's breakaway hero, in fourth overall at 3 seconds.
That second place finish giving Scaroni 5th place, and Jonathan Lastra, the only Spaniard now in that top 6, having been a couple of Spaniards in there yesterday, having moved down, so that shuffled things again today. The bonus seconds at both the intermediate sprint points and the finish, shaping our top 10 really. But Noah Hobbs, young British rider, takes over the lead of the Midnight Sun jersey. Ian and I, of course, are entirely impartial. We don't really care whether it's a British rider or not, although this is a nice one. Nice one to see on a tough day, in which Noah Hobbs has shown himself well throughout that stage too. I'm assuming that the British rider Noah Hobbs will also take over the points classification, although he won't be able to wear it, of course. That will go to the rider second in that classification. We will confirm all of these things for you, because those of you watching our digital coverage will, I'm sure, be able to see all of our podium presentations. We're getting yet another chance now to see this slightly nondescript looking final climb here above Hammerfest, which has proved a brilliant racing terrain for today. It's a nice snaking road. They never get clear sight of the finish line either, which maybe is another thing, Ian, on a road like this. They're not really getting a clear view of the finish until they turn to it, did they? No,
absolutely. We see this is the point that Scaroni did move up and was trying to help out Gazzoli, but as we saw, that we're around 300 metres to go. Just, I think, at this point, he manages to go round the Uno X riders and they just lose each other. I think Scaroni jumps in a moment to find a better position, but we see Hobbs just a little bit too far back, just on the left-hand side of our screen, and just unable to move up. Here we see Scaroni go and just gets Lastra, kind of shuts the door on Gazzoli, and so that's where he loses the wheel, and then Scaroni kicks. Gazzoli gets an extra lead out from Lastra in the end, and that just aided him a little bit. Just another wheel to follow all the way. Just about manages to get back into the wheel of Scaroni, but always protected from the wind from the left-hand side. And as I said in commentary, just won it fairly easily in the end.
Yeah, I guess unless we hear Scaroni interview, we won't quite know whether that was a lead out, but I think going into that final bend, Scaroni was going for that for himself. He didn't exactly twitch as soon as, and he certainly didn't sit up when Gazzoli came past him. He kept going as well. But only a tiny Astana Kazakhstan logo there for your winners post up and celebration there. It's a typical wet day's rain jacket celebration. Didn't even bother taking it off, and who can blame him? It's been a cold day out there, shortest of all 4 stages of the Arctic Race of Norway, and yet one which will take a bit of getting over, I think, because it ended up being a pretty tough day, particularly if you're one of those riders who was stuck in the various splits that happened in the crosswinds today. We've had it all today. Uphill finish, slightly surprise winner, comeback rider who's been down to the development team and found himself back in the world team. Rain, beautiful landscape, sea eagles, reindeer, hacking rain, and Ian and I. It doesn't get much better than that, does it? It has been a great second stage.
Very
Sorry?
popular win. Baroncini came to congratulate him. So, yeah, all the Italian riders giving him a pat on the back and a well done. And just goes to show how much this win meant to him. His comeback trail to the World Tour team. But it's like whenever I do the research into these commentaries, into these riders, it's amazing how many riders go really, really deep into their careers and don't have a single professional win to their name. So, yeah, it's huge to win one bike race, and it just shows the meaning of getting across that line first to these riders.
Yeah, well, he's 24 years of age, so still in the emergence of his career, but from what he said, and understandably, I think, having maybe felt like he's had a year in a bit of wilderness racing in the development team, very much proving his worth in that Astana Kazakhstan world team, that's for sure. One of the things that will probably add to how well known he is amongst the other riders, he spent 2 years in the Kolpak Balan team, the under-23 team, which has produced so many top young Italian riders. Well, tomorrow's stage, the Saturday stage, starts in Hammerfest, so I'm presuming the riders are going to be staying in this beautiful seaside town in Hammerfest, and they're going to be riding out of there tomorrow, and they'll go back across the same bridge. They're following the same route out, literally exactly the same route out as well. They go back over the Kvalsund Bridge, and the same run-in as well, and they have an early sprint point in Skydi. And then a KOM just after it. Very close together, those two, having turned back onto the Finnmark mainland. Tomorrow's finish in Havøysund. Again, an uphill finale after a bridge crossing too. So today's winner, the 24-year-old Italian Michele Gazzoli. The Astana Kazakhstan team, which has a strong Italian core to it as well, actually.
The prize is from the mayor and the foreign minister. Michele Gazzoli!
First professional victory for a man who looks to have a really good uphill snap as well. Making up loads of wheel lengths coming towards the finish. Congratulated by the first ever winner of the Arctic Race of Norway, Thor Hushovd. There's that stage result again. Dylan Teuns looking like he's got a bit of form in this race in 9th place there, Ian. And I say that as, I mean, he's an illustriously decorated professional, won some really big races, Dylan Teuns. He's just been in a little bit of wilderness as well of late. So, hopefully this is him coming into some form. He's looked good. Certainly his team are behind him, Israel Premier Tech.
Få opp her I dag. Han har jobbet hardt på begge de to første etappene for å komme dit som han akkurat nå. Ja, og det blir da sammenlagt som kommer ganske snart.
Certainly in amongst the other 3 stage races that are going on. This will get some people talking back in Great Britain, having a young British rider pulling on the Midnight Sun jersey in this race. And of course, if Noah Hobbs goes on to win this overall, he'll become the second British winner of a Norwegian stage race for the men, that is, this year, because of course the Tour of Norway earlier this year was won by who won it again, Ian? Oh my goodness, my brain has just
Ben Tulip.
Thank you, Ben Tulip. Ineos. Ben Tulip. My apologies, I did mention it yesterday and suddenly my brain has left me. Yeah, so that would be a turn up for the books. 2 British riders, maybe revelling in these Norwegian conditions. And by the looks of it, Noah Hobbs' team getting even more so behind him today, rightly so. But the gaps are small, which means that those bonification points tomorrow are going to be closely fought ones, that is for sure, in the run into Havøysund. There's an early one in Skadi just before the climb. In fact, it's at the base of the Skadi summit, so that could set things up interestingly tomorrow. Be one to watch to see how much of a breakaway we have before that point. The first sprint comes after 51 kilometres covered tomorrow in Skadi, and then we have a long midsection of about 30 kilometres before another bonification point in Lillefjord. Then once again, it's a back-ended stage. 2 climbs of Kirkdalen summit and Selvika summit as well, so plenty of KOM points at the end. We have an all-category climb to finish tomorrow at Havøysund. It's just over 2 kilometres in length, the categorised part of it, and an average of 10.5%. So, here is our new leader, Great Britain's Noah Hobbs. Well, as he's listed here, Alfred Hobbs, but certainly better known in racing circles as Noah, the young British rider for Groupama FDG. Just taking it all in, I think. He's looked really good so far today. That is delightful to see, Ian. I've commentated on that young man since he was about 12. In fact, I was looking back through previous results, and I can remember seeing him win an under-14s race down in Torbay, down in Devon, one of the National Series races down there. I think I seem to remember that.
Looked a little bit shocked to be in the yellow jersey, didn't he? I think
did.
that's something that he's going to have to get used to, because he's showing some serious turn of speed within those sprints, and yeah, turning into a really top international rider. He first came to my recognition as a Techers rider with Alex Briggs on that team that helps develop younger riders from London and South East area, and does a cracking job. And it's great to see another young rider coming through the Groupama setup, as you see him now in the blue jersey, and he's going to have the white jersey as well for the under-23, under-25 rider. So I think on a cold day like today, they're just happy to be able to put on another jersey at the end of this one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a shame for any rider, as it was for Alberto Danese yesterday, when you're holding multiple classifications, not to be able to wear them all. The old combined jersey comes in handy on that one, doesn't it? Split them in half. There we go. 19-year-old Noah Hobbs of the Keep Continental Groupama FDG. Leading on points by 2 points from Alberto Danese. Still looking back down the results from today as they're populated. Hello, Santa. Yeah. That is the Santa, by the way, Ian. That's the real one. Vincent van Hemelen, of course, today taking all the points, including the all-category points at the Savez Summit, leading. And actually not just leading, but then getting involved in protecting his teammate, thinking of Milan Fretin and others as well in that finale, running into the finish as well. There goes the peacock jersey. That's the climbing competition. Look at that, he's got a big lead, Vincent van Hemelen. Tomorrow, well, there's only one, there's a Scaldi Summit, so I suspect he might want to have a day off a bit tomorrow, because on Sunday's final stage, the Skadi Summit comes early on, and then once again, 2 big summits just before the finish at North Cape. He's going to have his work cut out. Just be interesting to see which of the riders who are now sitting in that top 10 on the KOM classification fancy trying to knock him off the top. But he looks good, doesn't he, Ian? He looks strong right the way through this stage.
He does, and him taking that jersey at the end of this race might come down to how the GC battle plays out, because if the GC battle goes kind of up those longer climbs towards the end of the stages, if see Noah Hobbs here with that under-25 jersey, his 3rd jersey of the podium so far. But as I was saying, with the KOM competition, if the GC guys race those final climbs and take out the points, it's that unfortunate situation that I don't like to see, is when someone almost wins a classification by accident.
No, you don't want that.
So it'd be a shame. Hemelen's put a lot of work into claiming that jersey and pulling out a decent lead, so hope to see him in the breakaway again on Sunday to try and pick up some more points. But Noah Hobbs, best under-25 rider within the race.
Yep, he's in that raglan white jersey with the red sleeves, but he won't be. it will roll down tomorrow to the next best under 25. So that will be Danese will be wearing, I guess Danese will be wearing blue. So it might be Gazzoli actually who gets to wear that one. He's another one of the older ones in that under 25 category.
I was looking up the ages within this race. It must be one of the youngest average ages of a peloton for any race, because you click on most of the riders and there are an awful lot of them under 25, under 26.
That's maybe one of the benefits of there being 4 one-week stage races, or 4 multiple stage races on this week after that mega super worlds we've had. There's the GC. Alberto Danese sitting second now. And Uno X, the leading team. I think they're the leading team by the looks of it. I remember the best team being up on the podium yesterday. They've definitely earned their porridge today. Best finisher.